I just wanted to say a warm welcome to everyone to today's event. Sorry for the slight confusion with times, but we are delighted to welcome you to our event and also all colleagues. And I'm going to hand over to Vivian to just outline then today's agenda and also then welcome our keynote speaker.
Hello, good morning. I'm Vivian Porritt, one of the strategic leaders of Women Ed. Thank you so much for joining us today, and my apologies also. My colleagues in Women Ed Tech will be just laughing uproariously at this because they can do it so smoothly. My apologies, but we're going to have a great morning. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. If I could share my screen now then, Lizana, I will do so. Good morning, everybody then. I would like to introduce today two phenomenal, fantastic networks for everybody to join at this early stage of their career. First of all, Women Ed. Our mission is to connect existing and aspiring women leaders. And in global education now, which I'll explain more as we go through. The two hashtags on the screen there are open to you for this event. We'd really like you to include hashtag Women Ed in it, because then we can talk with you and share with you on Twitter as well. And the whole Women Ed global community is going to join in this conversation, because they follow by the hashtag. So if you could actually put hashtag Women Ed in following on Twitter, you can join a real dialogue on Twitter as well. I'm proud to teach as the Chartered College hashtag. And if you follow with that and add that in, the college will pick that up over the weekend and next week. And at Women Ed London is the Women Ed Network hosting this event. Lizana is one of the Women Ed Network leaders, as are several of our contributors today. And look at the amazing, phenomenal contributions we've got. We really want you to get off to a flying start in your career. I know the timing might not suggest that, but we really do want you to get off to a flying start in your career. I would like to thank very much Lift Lessons, who as a partner are sponsoring all of the webinars that Women Ed is doing in May, June, July, and going to do that in September and October. They're a phenomenal partner, two women who were teachers who joined a Women Ed Tech session at BET a year ago and decided to start their own company. And that's what they're doing now, and they're sponsoring us is a way of paying back to the whole Women Ed network what they're learning and what they are trying to do with us. So thank you very much, Lift Lessons. That's our mission. Women in education, there's lots of you on the chat in Women in Education. There are barriers to your progress if you want to be leaders. We all live in a socialized society. Those barriers are not barriers of our making as women. They're barriers of the social structures within which we work. We're a feminized profession. So if you want to consider leading, we want to help remove the barriers so that you have that choice. And your journey in education and to leadership may be more like a climbing wall. Lots of women come on, come off, go sideways, jump around a bit, come back much later. And that makes no difference. Whatever your progress to leadership is, we want to ensure you can lead. And that's our fundamental mission. And we're a values-led organisation. We have our 8 C's, and Women Ed London, for example, is one of the networks in our community, and we support and stand for each other. And lots of Women Ed events will explore and get to grips with some of those values in different ways. We hope you're going to have some brilliant connections that you can make today with our contributors, but also with the people that you're going to connect with through the chat and on Twitter. We have 4 particular campaigns, as well as wanting to support women in all of their choices and aspects. Increased representation in leadership was the reason that created Women Ed, because we're angry that it takes women in primary schools and secondary schools longer to become a head teacher. They get paid less on average as a head teacher, and they face unconscious bias and sometimes discrimination. Those of you at the beginning of your career, I appreciate this may not sound the most positive start to this session for you, but that's because we want you to know we're here and we're helping you to make the differences you need. And we're certainly going to reduce and eradicate the gender pay gap in education, which is high, and we're doing things about it together. Advocating for flexible working practices is a really significant thing we need to do for women, so that you don't have to make a choice between your family and your career. And we're particularly focusing this year, and it's obviously such a sad need to have to do this, but we want to increase the representation of BAME women leaders. And we think that's really important, of course, especially even more so at a time like this, the time that we face at the moment. We have 29 networks, with 1 more about to join us, and those are our networks all over the world. Women Ed started to give women a voice on Twitter. That's all we wanted to do. Now we want to give women a voice in global education, and we want that to make a difference to all colleagues in schools and to our students. Women, girl students if they can't see that they look like leaders in their school because of their gender or their ethnicity, then we need to do something about that globally. And the next network we're about to launch is Kazakhstan. That's going to be an interesting one for us because they don't do Twitter. So we're forging ourselves into a new way of working with Kazakhstan, which will be 30 networks in 16 countries. And it's really important that we welcome and share all of our allies in this. In particular, our he for she allies, all the men in education who believe in gender equality as a human right and want to support every member of their colleagues to be the best educator, the best teacher, the best leader that they can be. So we know there's men joining us here today, and you're very, very welcome. Thank you for joining in. Just want to take a moment to share the impact of Women Ed. At every event we do, we popcorn at the end of it, and we're going to do that today as well. I'm going to ask you at the end of the session how, as a result of this morning, you're going to be 10% braver. And some of what we share here is the impact of people doing that. I'll just give you a moment to be looking at that and thinking it through. There's a whole set of ways in which we have impact. I'm sorry, I've got my BBC moment going on at the moment. There's a whole number of ways in which we have impact. Have a look at those top 2 numbers at the beginning. There's 31,987 followers for Women Ed last night. I'm expecting that number to change this morning, colleagues, and the Women Ed London followers. We've got amazing community. We have a blog, newsletters, and we run through our networks with over 130 network leaders. And most importantly, we're all voluntary. We all do this because we are passionate about making a difference in education, and we want women to be able to lead in the same way as a man is able to lead. We've had over 8,000 events. We've got wonderful partnerships. I described our partnership with Lift Lessons at the beginning. And our new partnership with the National College of Education is for a women-only leadership masters. And I'm going to come back to the books in a moment. I just wanted to show an example of the impact of Women Ed and the impact here in Women Ed London. This is a wonderful tweet from last night. And I was privileged, as was Lizana and several of our Women Ed London networks talking with you today, to be there at the moment when Maremma Fuwoko pledged to become the first Niqabi head in her knowledge and her existence. And last night she tweeted that she's now head of school. That changed her perceptions of herself and what she was able to do and how to go about it. And we are absolutely thrilled. We have hundreds and hundreds of tweets that demonstrate this impact of our collective joining together to make a difference for colleagues in education. Congratulations to everybody who's becoming more brave as we work through these difficult times. And in an even more bonkers way, which again, remember, we only wanted to give people a voice on Twitter, we've written one book which seemed to be received very well, and we've just done the manuscript for the second book. And so our work this year in Women Ed is to keep explaining and to keep asking us all to be 10% braver. But we want to know the ways in which you are being 10% braver now. We want to amplify them. We want to celebrate them. And then, because it's us, we're going to say, fabulous, what you're going to do next. We want to keep this ball rolling amongst educators and women. And I just wanted to share with you ways in which you can keep in touch with us. And when we send the presentations through, I'm going to add the links in for these so that you can dive straight in and see the ways you want to work with us. Do have a look at our events and blogs, which are on the website. Find out more about us. Then sign up for a newsletter. And we have a range of social media available for your choice. Have a look at our Women Ed Being 10% Braver channel on YouTube, for example. Quick and easy way to find out more about us and get involved. So, throughout this morning, we'll keep asking that question in the chat. As a result of what you're listening to, of what you're seeing on the chat, how are you going to be 10% braver in your career and the next steps that you want to make? I really hope you want to get involved with Women Ed, and I know you will absolutely want to get involved with the Chartered College of Teaching. Dame Alison Peacock, the CEO, is an amazing woman. I don't know whether she can hear me yet, but I hope she can. You're an amazing woman, Alison, and I'm very privileged to be Vice President of the Council and able to support the work that you are doing. Alison is going to describe what the college is about and the difference the college is trying to make. So thank you very much, everyone. Having a wonderful morning, and I would like to hand over to Alison Peacock, CEO of the Chartered College of Teaching.
All right, thank you. So thank you so much for joining the Chartered College Women Ed together on this conference today. We're really passionate at the Chartered College about supporting all new teachers. We believe that when you join our profession, you deserve to join with the utmost optimism, with opportunities to really build your skills as a teacher. And we think this is a lifelong endeavour. And I don't say that to frighten you, I just say that because to be a teacher is, I think, to be a learner. And it's pretty ironic, I think, if we think that we're teaching and we're not also learning ourselves. The Chartered College didn't exist when I started teaching. It's a new organisation. It's only been running for 3.5 years. I wish it had existed, because what we're doing at the Chartered College is we are curating knowledge from classrooms alongside the knowledge from academics and building that bridge between the two, so that everything that you read about in education, that you experience in the classroom, ideas that you try out, things that you hear from colleagues, we also want to theorise some of that. And we want to build a combination between theory and practice in a way, as I say, that didn't exist when I was first teaching. We've just developed what we're calling an early career hub. And this is a space on our website that is particularly dedicated to new teachers. If you are a trainee teacher at the moment, you can join the Chartered College for free. It's completely free. All you need to do is to sign up, and then you would have access to this early career hub, which is full of films of classrooms with children in them. Who knew? Opportunities to read articles, to engage in debates. Sheffield Hallam University are supporting this initiative with us, and we're really keen that mentors also join us, so that in that particular space of your Chartered College website, you have the opportunity to hear from other early career teachers, to really develop your practice, to ask questions, to see webinars. So for example, a fortnight ago, we were really fortunate that Doug Lemov from the US joined us, and we have a film of his input, which is available on that hub. So please consider joining the Chartered College. If you are beyond your trainee year, then it's only £1.88 a month to join as an NQT. And subsequently, many of the women on this conference today are fellows. And this is because in the same way that Vivian has just been describing, we are really ambitious for women in education. Vivian herself is a fellow of the Chartered College and is vice president. Later on, you will hear from another vice president, Professor Sam Twistleton, another fellow. To become a fellow is to be recognised for all of the skill that you offer as a member of education, as a teacher. You need to have been teaching at least 10 years to apply for that. And we believe that this is all about how we raise the status of our whole profession, but also, most importantly, of women within education. Women Ed is a new initiative, and again, this is something that wasn't around when I first started teaching. I couldn't have predicted at the beginning of my career where I might end up, but what's driven me throughout all of this has been an absolute restlessness to say we need better, we need to do more, we need to be able to help our children and our young people more, we need to reduce inequity in society. My own research, Learning Without Limits, is all about how we make sure that we never look at children in terms of labels and numbers, how we look at the children and the young people, and we never give up on what might be possible for them to achieve. And now that I've been a teacher for a very long time, and I now lead the Chartered College of Teaching, I see my role as someone wanting to look around me at our profession and say, what more can we do to help you grow in your professionalism? So to become a member is a first step, and we very much welcome all of you to become members. To think about becoming a chartered teacher is something that you can do after 3 years of your experience in the classroom, and this is to really gain recognition for your skill. From January 2021, there will be the opportunity for colleagues to become leaders, and then we also have this notion of becoming fellows. So I just want to finish, we have a film on the screen now called My Early Career Hub. I just want to finish with, if we could play that, Lizana, that would be really helpful. Thank you. Can we play this? Thank you. So essentially, my message to you is join the Chartered College, enjoy the community that we create, of course, enjoy the community of Women Ed as well, and together we'll ensure that your career grows from strength to strength. Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alison. Thank you so much. We're getting a lot of questions coming in, except I can't see them. This isn't a question, this is a comment. Membership of the Chartered College was invaluable as a trainee. So they're saying thank you. I'm going to be a registered, recently qualified teacher. Jennifer, congratulations on that. Great that people are accessing the resources. There's a question. Does 3 years of teaching include your PGCE year?
No, so it's 3 years of teaching once you have, once you're in the classroom as a qualified teacher. So it includes your NQT year, but of course with the new early career framework, that will now take 2 years. So it will be, once you finish that, it would then be a year, and then you would be eligible to apply to become a chartered teacher. So 3 years of practicing in the classroom. And this is because there's been some research by Kraft and Pape that shows that after 3 years, we start to rely on habits in the way that we bring children into the classroom, the way that we teach them, everything about what we do. And so what we want to do at that point, or way beyond it actually, you can be teaching 15 years and become a chartered teacher, is we want to disrupt some of those habits that have just held you in good stead up until now and say, what else might there be that we can learn, that we can adapt, that we can enable you to try? So thank you for that question.
I wonder if you could just follow that up a little bit, Alison, with a question from Michelle about what exactly does it mean to become a chartered teacher?
So the process of studying to become a chartered teacher takes 14 months. And in that time, you identify an area for you that you are particularly intrigued about. You do a literature review, you carry out some practice, you do you have an interview with an expert in the field that you're inquiring into, you video some of what's going on in your classroom, you sit an exam, you reflect on your practice, and then you do a research study. So it's a very rigorous, it's quite a tough program, I have to say. I'm probably not selling it terribly well, except that those teachers that have taken part in this already are telling us that this is some of the best CPD they've ever had, because it's tailored to you, to your classroom. You can't get away with just going up in the loft and getting down things and making a portfolio. This is about you right now in your classroom and reflecting on your practice. And those teachers, anecdotally, that have achieved chartered teacher status are already telling us about the promotions they've received, the opportunities they've got within their organisation to really share their knowledge. Because of course, knowledge about research-informed practice is really at a premium right now. And during the pandemic and beyond, we will need to make sure that we are doing the most effective things that we can to support our children and young people. There's no room for guesswork because it's too important. The time that we have needs to be really optimised.
Thank you very much, Alison. Thank you. Lots of praise for the resources on the Chartered College. Can international teachers apply for the chartered status?
Yes, exactly. In the same way that Women Ed is global, the Chartered College has aspirations to offer a status that for the first time ever would mean that there'd be a portability around the world. So wherever you were in the world, if you became a chartered teacher, people would know, well, goodness me, this is a really excellent colleague. We have a long way to go with this. We're only 3.5 years old. You know, we're still a toddler in some respects, in Emma Turner's words. But the reality is we have a huge ambition, and that's an ambition that we share with Women Ed. We want to transform education, and we need to transform society in the same way that we believe that we should have, women should have a greater voice. We believe that actually the whole of society needs to be far more equal. And this is an absolute mission which is why this conference works so well today, because we both share an ambition for everybody. We must do better in the future.
And two powerful networks that can support your career. That's brilliant, isn't it, Alison?
Yeah.
Final question, Alison. How long do you have to have taught before you can complete chartered status? And Sue Harris is asking that.
Yeah, so you need to have taught for 3 years before you start the programme, but you can. We've had teachers who have already got a doctorate, who've been teaching for 20 years, who've got a senior leadership role, who've decided they want to study to become a chartered teacher. So the entry bar is literally around that 3 years of experience post-qualification, so that you can really know what you're doing in the classroom, so that you can begin to disrupt some of that. So we look forward to you joining. We've got opportunities all over the country. If you go onto our website, you can see. And those applications are still open right now.
That's wonderful. There are a few more questions, some interesting ones. So if you had 5 minutes and could reply to them on the chat itself, Alison, that would be really brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're about to move over to our next contributor then, which is Alana Gay. Do we have Alana there with us?
Yes, I am. Here I am.
Hello, Alana. Good morning. Very welcome to our Early Career Teacher event. I'm going to leave it to you to introduce yourself.
Okay.
You have quite a bit you can say about that.
Yeah.
Do that within your presentation. And we're so delighted you could join with us today.
That is not a problem at all. So hello and welcome everyone, and well done for taking part in this opportunity that there is for you to get that early career framework and that early career support.
Can you just go to presentation mode, Alana?
Okay, I will share my screen, but you've disabled my screen sharing. So could you, if you enable it, I'll be able to share my screen.
I think Alana's got that. Have you got that, Alana?
No, not yet.
Oh, sorry, Lizana. Has Lizana got that? I don't have that.
So I'll just speak and I'll just keep checking, and once I'm able to share my screen, I will. So it's just for everyone to get this idea. I'm going to talk to you today about how do you become an effective part of a network. So when we think about going into teaching and education, we're normally thinking about, okay, who am I going to meet? I'm going to be with the students. What if I'm part of this team that I'm going to have around me? But a big part of being a part of the team is about who is there to support you as you go along. Your NQT year, your early career teacher work is going to be very, very difficult. And it'll be difficult for 2 reasons. One, you're going to be adjusting to a new lifestyle. You are now in the lifestyle of a teacher, and that is very different to the lifestyle of someone who we can call a teaching civilian. And secondly, you will have an interaction with students, with staff, with people all around you, and you will wonder about how things that are happening in the modern world are going to fit into what you're doing as a teacher. Are you making that impact? We're here to make that impact. In order for you to process all of this, and it's a really essential part of your career, has to be about how you build that network of support around you. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about how we do that, but I'm going to take it from the perspective, a personal perspective, as well as a wider perspective. Now, when we talk about effective networking, for me, I always say I feel like the raisin in the rice. And that's because I'm an ethnic minority, female, from a Caribbean background, so I'm also an immigrant. When I first started in teaching, I came to teach in Hackney, which is in East London, back in the day when Hackney was dominated by lots of issues. So I went to teach in a place that we used to call the Murder Mile. And in being there, although I, as an ethnic minority teacher, was having an experience that I would say was on par with the sensitivities of my students, I was not the majority. There were lots and lots of white colleagues who didn't quite experience the same. Now, that was my first experience of feeling and being Black, because being raised in the Caribbean, people are neither here nor there about your ethnicity. Now, take that into where I am currently. So as I move through the ranks, I've come to realize that the people I interact with become maler and whiter. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but when it comes to sharing thoughts, sharing ideas, building that confidence to be there, bearing that confidence to even enter the room, has to be something that is intrinsic inside of you, because you feel like the raisin in the rice. You stand out incredibly well. Now, for you as an NQT, sometimes you're going to feel that when you're in the classroom. You're going to enter the classroom and feel like everybody else there knows what they're doing. Every other teacher knows what they're doing, but you're just standing out, and everyone is going to look at you and someone is going to tell you you're doing it wrong. How do you move past that? Well, that comes from what networks you have to support you and the people in the background. So my powerful network originated from Women Ed, but I then went on with some others to found a network called BA MEed, and it's Black, Asian, and minority ethnic educators. And we're not as big as Women Ed, we're definitely not as big as a chartered college, but we look at those specific areas that we think that support is needed, because ethnic minority teachers have a totally different experience in the vast majority of cases to their white colleagues. They are not the norm. And even though students might be the norm, and there is lots of provision and advice that tends to go for students, there's not that much to support those Black women, Black males, Asian women, all of our minority teachers, or non-white teachers, I should probably say, in education. And if you look at our modern perspective and everything that's happening in our society now, sometimes you need an advice center where you can just process the trauma that they're experiencing, process the violence that you see. How do you get your students to process that? And that comes from our network. So as an example, our network has put forward a COVID risk assessment for ethnic minority teachers, because that, as part of the consideration that comes forward, because they're far more affected by the COVID-19 crisis, is not something that has been done by any of our mainstream. So that network is there to support you, but that all stems from the other grassroots networks that I've been a part of. So I'd have to credit Women Ed. I used to be one of the Women Ed London leaders until the workload became far too high to run two networks. And LGBT Ed, all of who look specifically at issues. So if there are specific advice that you need on how women need to progress, how ethnic minorities should progress, how the LGBT Alliance can be formed, please do use these networks. They're open, they've got lots of advice to share, and they're always willing to give you that extra support. Then there's a sort of subject-specific network that comes. So I used to be a part of the Stimulating Physics Network. So as a science teacher, I spent a lot of time trying to engage, encourage, and I needed a lot more information. Now, there are subject-specific networks for every single subject, and you can engage with them. It's not just the Royal Societies. There are lots of networks that will give you and keep your knowledge up to date as you build into your career, as well as giving you ideas. Then there's the professional networks, those that try to encourage us to be a part of research and to do that little bit more. For me, that's the Chartered College of Teaching, where just even reading through the Impact magazine that we get and reading through the information gives me a new perspective, gives me a bit of research, allows me that platform to delve deeper into this career that I've built. And finally, I'd say Twitter is hit or miss on Twitter sometimes, but if you build a network around you that's able to understand of like-minded individuals, also some that you disagree with, you will be able to get that understanding, that sharing of resources, and you will get lots of positivity on social media from all of the different teachers that are there. So why is there a need for networking in the first place? Well, there's not one way to network, but every way sort of builds your capacity and the people you know. So if you've ever read The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, you'll see that there are 3 types. So you have your connectors, and when you go into your general networks, you'll need all of these different types of people. So your connectors are the ones who are going to connect you to different people. They're going to put you in touch with someone. So when you go, I have a question on teaching this, then your connector is going to be like, oh, well, I'm not the best person to do that, but I know that this other person has done a lot of work with it on this topic. So if you think of the Chartered College of Teaching, they're the ones who are going to say, I have a question on this aspect of education. Well, we have a lot of research on there. Why don't you have a look at our database and see what research there is? Same way you have those who are the Marvins. And the Marvins are those who connect people through sharing their knowledge. And in that sharing of knowledge, they ensure that everyone has the opportunity to learn a little further from those that are all around you. So in the BA MEed network, we base our knowledge on the influence that we have from the universities that support us. So that's universities like the University of Leeds Beckett University, where Damien Page is a very big supporter, as well as any University of Greenwich, where we have research that comes from their education department that we are then able to use and filter to allow others to understand the Black experience in education. And then you have your salesmen, the people who will use their knowledge to engage and persuade you on what you should be doing and what you can be doing. Those are the people that you need in order to connect you to others, but also to connect you to ideas. Now, not every idea is an idea that you should take on, but having a selection in front of you that you can then make a choice within your career so that you can have as many experiences as possible is a really positive and forward step that you have. So within the BA MEed community, we sort of make sure that we have all of these different levels. And I think if you look at the 2 networks that are here with you today, Women Ed and as well as the Chartered College, they have all of these functions. So in BA MEed, we try to connect lots of, if you say that you have never met a Black head teacher in the independent sector, well, now you have, but we connect with others and we connect you to people who are in similar situations and could give you advice. We have the sharing of knowledge because we have a knowledge page where we share the books that you could be reading in order, if you want to diversify your curriculum, we give you advice on how you can do that. And in the same way, as a salesman, we make sure that you are well prepared for you moving into the next stage of your career. All of these networks, Women Ed, Chartered College, they do these things. And that's why it's really important that you play an active, note, active, not passive, role in delivering that. Because each network that you have around you will serve a different process. So while your family and relatives will be there to just do the basics and make sure that you're well supported and you're fed every day, etc., you have neighbors who will check in on you. These professional associations that we have are the ones that ensure that we're able to network well and we're well tuned in to what's happening in education, because education has to be an evolving career. Teaching is an evolving career. We cannot stagnate. We always have to be seeking our improvement. And these professional associations that you have in front of you are the ones that lead that drive. So if you're new to personal networking, here's my 2 cents on the things that you can be doing. So first, have a variety. Everyone teaches something different. BA MEed is not just for ethnic minorities. We have a lot of white members. Women Ed is not just for women. They have a lot of male members. The Chartered College is not just academics. They have a lot of teachers that are engaged in the face-to-face delivery of education that they also use in order to build that research base. Every network is going to give you something different, something that will challenge your thinking. And interact in those networks, even if it is in small amounts. So Women Ed has the mantra of being 10% braver. Sometimes it's 10% braver to just send your first tweet. It's 10% braver to just try something that you've read in Impact Magazine, try something inside of your classroom. It's 10% braver for you to actually come out and say, how can I teach students that I have around me about what's happening in the George Floyd protest right now? How does that impact on my students? So you have to interact with your network in order to get the main benefit of being a part of it. I would say, especially if you engage on Twitter or any social media with education, let the real you be the digital you. If the real you is the digital you, then the moral and values that you carry will make it a positive experience for everyone within your network. You can only police yourself, you can't police other people, and you can't police how they respond, but you can know well within yourself that you have kept true to your moral values and to your moral compass. And I'd say learn about your profession and all the professions that link into it. Education is not just teaching, it's far wider than that. There is a lot more for you to learn. There's a lot to learn about researching. There's a lot to learn about embedding practice and psychotherapy. There's a lot for us to learn. And as daunting as it may be, having a wide, varied network allows you to access all of those ideas that you can then expand on at a later point. One thing to be wary of, beware of the bubble. There's no point being in an echo chamber where everyone is just like you, speaks like you, thinks like you, and agrees with you. That's not expanding, that's just ensuring that you feel like you're always correct. That's not what we want in our education sector, because we want critical thought to be something that happens. So beware creating a network that is exactly like you. So if you look around now and you think of your PGCE or your school's direct, or even in your school, and you think, hang on, everyone around me pretty much is exactly a stereotype of me, then there needs to be a bigger expansion so that you can get better ideas coming forward. And access networks out of your comfort zone. As I said before, we would invite lots of men to join Women Ed. We invite lots and lots of white people to join BA MEed, because it's about thinking outside of your normative, thinking outside of where you've been raised. Think about student networks, how best to get insight from your students about the ideas that are really essential to them. And be interested in that story. Don't just take that story at face value. Show real interest in unpicking all of the ideas that are coming from those various stories that you're going to get in your network. Because I can tell you from experience, you never know when you're going to encounter exactly the situation that you hear someone else describe. And gain information, but make sure you always check your information. Make sure that you always have that point of peer review where you're thinking critically about things that you're told. Accept nothing at face value. So my warning to you when you're networking would be this. Not all members of your network will operate in your favor, and that's absolutely fine. Because it gives you that idea that within any network, especially a broadened network, you have those that for some issues you would avoid, and for some issues you would turn to. But that doesn't mean you don't keep them as a part of your fringe network. When if a network link ends and you don't feel as involved, then that's absolutely fine as well. There is no obligation for you to remain friends with everyone for the rest of your life. Sometimes there is a network that is useful at that point in time and is beneficial to both you and the other person, but sometimes that needs to end. And always, always, I cannot stress enough, your moral purpose is what keeps you going inside of this job. Teaching is about what you feel in your core. And you need to be a part of networks that makes that core shine, makes that core feel like every day, even if it is the hardest day you've experienced, you can go there and feel refreshed. That is another purpose that comes from having that network around you. And seek to share as much as you obtain. Seek to share as much as you obtain. It's not just about what you're able to provide, but it's also about what you're able to share on a larger scale in order to keep your network going. So I encourage you all to go out there, have a look at the grassroots networks, the formally organized networks, even the informal networks that you build as you attend different events, even being on this event here. Here, just reach out, make one new friend, find someone who has a different experience and make a contact with them. That's all you need to do, start small. And that will help to build a network that will help you sustain your entire career. Because I can say that having met people like Karen Giles has allowed me to become the leader that I am. being a part of the Women Ed Network has allowed me to develop to the point that I'm confident in what I'm doing, and I'm self-assured in my moral purpose and in what I'm sharing today. So I hope that that becomes an experience for all of you, and that you take from this that you are really important in this teaching career, build your moral purpose within it, and use your network to support and sustain you as you head along, but give as much as you receive. So I hope that fulfills my remit. I cannot see Lizana or Vivian, but I think I'm within time as well.
Great, thank you so much, Alana. Really appreciate that. And thank you so much for all the sort of invaluable advice as well. I'm also one of the BA MEed steer group members, and it's a great pleasure to work with Alana. Just to answer a quick question, there was a question on coaching and mentoring. I did add my details and say, yes, do get in touch. We do run a program.
Yep.
Very happy to support you.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely, super. Thanks, Alana. Thanks for your time. I know how busy you are with COVID-19 and running schools, and we appreciate that.
Always happy to support.
Super. I'm delighted to welcome our next speaker, Jackie Hill. She is going to introduce herself and give you a bit more detail about her role as well at Teach First. Jackie, are you there?
I am, yes. I'm
Fantastic.
trying to share the screen, but it says the host is disabled. But
okay, let's just double check.
Feeling that you can maybe show it, Lizana.
I can share yours on my end. I think they both took powers back. I'll just reclaim that and then I will project yours. There you go. Okay. Right. Okay, Jackie.
Okay, so you're going to be my assistant?
Yes, that's right.
Yes, okay. Okay, thanks, Lizana. I'm really pleased to be here this morning to be talking about ways to support the career development of beginning and early career teachers. You know, there's going to be a lot of things that are echoed during the day, and there's a lot of what Alana has just said that may be echoed in what I'm saying. So that's good. It shows that, you know, great minds think alike and all the rest of it. So like a lot of people here this morning, I'm here wearing more than one hat. So you might not be able to see it, but there are clues just on this very first slide. The first one is my Chartered College hat. I joined Chartered College right at the beginning, believing we needed an independent professional organisation to provide support and a voice for teachers, all teachers, but particularly those at the start of their careers. And I'm so proud to be able to use the post-nominal FCCT. Can we stay on the first one? Thanks. So that's my first one, and I know that Alison has already talked about the great value, and it's been interesting in the chat to see how many people have said that they've been on the hub already and how fantastic it is. So I really would encourage people to go and have a look at that. It just is fantastic, and I'm delighted that with one of my other hats, it's memberships included in Teach First's ECF programme. My second hat is my Women Ed hat, and if you can see me, you can see I'm wearing my Women Ed earrings today, my purple earrings, and I got involved in that a few years ago, and like Chartered College, I really wish it had existed when I was an NQT. I'm going to say a bit more about that in a minute. And finally, my third hat I've mentioned already is the Teach First hat. I only joined the team in March, but was delighted to do so to support the rollout of the Early Career Framework, because I do believe it's possibly the most exciting initiative for teachers in years. And I knew I was joining an organisation which has been at the heart of ECF inception, design and development. So on to my other hats, because whenever I was thinking about these virtual hats that I wear, I thought to myself, well, what other hats? Can we go to the next slide, Rosanna? Thank you. I thought, what about the different hats that I wear? We all wear different hats, but what sort of do they tell us about? How do they reflect who we are and what we do? What are yours? What are the different hats you wear in your families, in work and so on? Here are three of mine that I thought would link in very much to what we're thinking about today. The first hat is actually one of my favourites. It's the one I wear most. It's my outside in hat. I love it. It's warm. It gives me great protection from the cold and winter, and it's produced by an organisation whose purpose is to bring those on the outside of society in. So it's very much a reminder, as Alana was saying, about the moral purpose that we have as teachers, and that, you know, as we progress towards leadership, it should be values-led and ethical leadership. And it's really important not to lose sight of that, because that's what keeps you going in the dark days when things aren't going so well. If you can keep sight of that strong moral purpose, and also that lifts you whenever things are really going well, that gives you your moments of real joy. But also this hat, I have it here because, you know, if you want to thrive and progress in your career, you do need to look after yourself. So you sometimes need a warm, cosy hat, and especially during those tough winter months. The second hat, it is a hat. It's a sparky hat. It's the mascot of the team I support. And this has been mentioned already. You know, as educators, we too are part of a team, or a whole series of teams, really. So the message from that is you are not on your own. Alana's already talked about the various networks that you can join, and events like this morning prove that you are not on your own. Find your teams and networks to support you. Don't be afraid to ask for help. That was something I wish I had known as an NQT. And also remember to cheer others on too, just as the way you would cheer your team on. There's nothing like a bit of praise to motivate others, particularly your students. And my last hat here is my Mother of the Bride hat. Only worn once, I have to say. And it's a reminder of the importance of family and friends. They're such an important part of your wider support network. Make sure that you still have time with them. Get your work-life balance right, or as I prefer to say, your life-work balance, and make sure you celebrate your achievements with them. So, in a way, these three hats sort of reflect the three elements of Chartered College. Really, they do. Celebrate, support, and connect. And the colour of hats 1 and 3 will resonate with all those from Women Ed. So just to talk a little bit then about Women Ed, and if I can go to the next slide, please. So what might Women Ed do for you? You know, it will be different for different people, but just last month I wrote a blog about what it has done for me, and I just want to highlight 3 of the elements from that. I love the campaigns in Women Ed: breaking the ceiling for women, more diverse representation and leadership, flexible working in particular. But Twitter has already been mentioned, and engaging with the Women Ed community has shown me the power of EduTwitter. You know, Twitter, there's a lot of negative things about it, and I was very, very wary of it. But Women Ed truly introduced me to how powerful it can be as a brilliant way to connect with and learn from other educators, as a great source of ideas and CPD, to provide access to role models, resources, and coaches from all over the country. So, you know, really, really would encourage you as you develop your career to build up your own personal learning network on Twitter, and other ways too, of course. I love to see sometimes when someone posts a question on Twitter to the Women Ed community. I'm doing my master's and I need some data on women in leadership, and people jump in and help out. So it really can be a very practical source of support as you develop your career. Who should you follow? Well, you know, don't follow people that you think, you know, are going to give you grief. But, you know, I tend to stick with Twitter as a professional network, with occasionally a little bit of the personal coming in, so you get a glimpse of who I really am. But follow, if you're not sure, start with today's presenters, definitely the Chartered College, Women Ed nationally, and Women Ed in your region. Find your regional network and other Women Ed networks across the country and beyond. We also have some great he for she colleagues. Vivian mentioned that to start with. And I just want to give a shout out to Chris Reddy, who tweets as Brightways Coaching. I was speaking to him just a couple of days ago, and Chris is absolutely passionate about the impact of Women Ed on him. He says it has made him a better dad, teacher and leader. So those are my recommendations to start with. And you know, I've mentioned about the networks. So as well as the sort of virtual linking on Twitter, there's the face-to-face through the various events that we connect with one another, and on conferences. And it's wonderful to see people face-to-face and virtually this morning because we can't get together. But I'm lucky to be part of 2 regional networks in the Northwest and Women Ed Northern Ireland. And on the left of the screen is the very last face-to-face event that I was able to attend at the beginning of March. And that, you know, you can see a reflection there that we've got or chartered college members, and it just was a wonderful day, and it has helped me through the lockdown. Unfortunately, our Northwest event has had to be postponed, but we will be doing it subsequently. So, you know, find your regional network and link with that as well. And finally, the last thing I wanted to mention was Women Ed has been brilliant for exposing and calling out the imposter syndrome, which is a blocker for so many in relation to career development. Now, why is that significant for me? Well, you'll need to read the blog. There's a link to it on the right side of the slide. That refers to me and my development. And I know that Bookie's going to be doing a fab session with you shortly about that. So I'm going to leave it at that and read the blog if you want to find more. But within that imposter syndrome is confidence. And those 8 C's that Vivian mentioned earlier, confidence to me is the most important, along with ones we've already mentioned about collaborate and connect and celebrate. So if we can move to the next slide. I'm sort of quite glad that I included this next slide because we've talked about the early career framework, and I know Sam's going to do a fantastic input on that towards the end of the day. Don't miss it. In the chat, I saw somebody had put the early career framework is only in some counties this year. Well, there's been a change, and that was just the one thing that I wanted to share with you. So yes, the early rollout of the early career framework is going ahead in 4 key opportunity areas, the 2-year programme. But a very recent development as the result of the impact of COVID is that there's also going to be an emergency rollout of the early career framework. It's national, it's for NQTs in disadvantaged schools across the country. We don't have a list yet of those schools, but those that are serving disadvantaged pupils are likely to be eligible, and that's going to be a funded 1-year programme. And even if you're not going to be in a school, if you're an NQT or first year of your ECT as an ECT, an early career teacher, if you're not eligible for either the early rollout or the emergency rollout, the core programme, the online programme, is going to be made available nationally. That's going to be available for all NQTs. It's online, going to be online, and it's funded. What might that look like? If we can go to the next slide, just very quickly. This is, for example, the modules that Teach First have produced for year 1 of the ECF, and Teach First is it's just one of 4 ECF providers, and the other providers have also produced core ECF modules to support your professional development. So as NQTs, you're going to have a great choice, as will your schools. And if we can go on to the next slide. I just want to mention then those who are moving from NQT year into NQT +1 or the second ECT year. I noticed in the chat that some people had said about one was, I teach MFL and very interested in research, hoping to continue masters. Somebody else had said, well, what's the difference between a master's or chartered college or doing an MPQ? And actually, they're all very valid routes. And as you're moving forward, developing your career, you've got to start to take stock and think, what are the key things that are of interest to you? What are the things that really pathways, the career pathways you want to go down, and sometimes there may be overlap. So research in the classroom, brilliant, hone your classroom skills. You might want to become a careers leader and lead careers and employability for your pupils. You might want to support trainee teachers as a mentor and become a teacher educator, fantastic. And preparing for middle leadership, there's loads of leadership pathways there, including NPQs, and the NPQML is a great way forward. The main thing is to find out about the different routes and options before deciding what's best for you. And one of the best pieces of advice I was given over 20 years ago by a head teacher was take opportunities when they come. You know, really embrace opportunities to develop your career. At one point I wanted to hesitate. I thought I wasn't ready for a role, and I needed someone to encourage me to say, no, you are ready for it now. The networks this morning and the other networks that we talked about are brilliant for encouraging you to do that and providing coaching and mentoring. So, you know, align with those, find those that work for you, and make the most of your networks, resources and support available in school, with your training provider and with the wider education community. And finally, if there's anything that you want to find out more about from what I've talked about, those are my contact details. Please do get in touch, any questions at all. And if you want to know a little bit more, come along. We do ECF webinars. Our next panel event is on the 16th of June about that. And enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Thank you very much indeed. Jackie kindly put her Twitter details there, and we've been asked if we can share those each time. So just to repeat, Jackie, your Twitter account is?
At Hill, because that's my surname, the figure 1 _ Jackie.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for all your contribution, Jackie, much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to Kate Fallon. Kate is another member of our Women Ed London network team. Organised lots and lots of events, and looking forward to seeing her on the screen.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, my lovely person.
London. I'm going to have to ask Lizana to share my screen, if that's okay, or disable the screen sharing.
Yes, I need somebody to tell me if I'm the one who's got to do that, because I can't find it.
It's about a host and a co-host, isn't it? I mean, so complex.
Kate, I've made you a host, but I can reclaim it back. That's fine. I will project your slides, no problem.
Thank you. Do that. Okay. Yeah, fabulous. Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate. Looking forward to this.
Right. Good morning, everybody. So, yeah, I'm based in East London. And so I was actually looking forward to welcoming people to East London in real life before lockdown happened. But this is incredible. I'm so impressed that, you know, more than 272 participants I can see online. So I'm really embracing the opportunities that lockdown has given us in terms of our online learning. So my name is Kate Fallon. I'm the Director of Teaching School for the East London Early Years and Schools Partnership. And I also work within Echo Trust, which is a trust of 6 schools, 4 primary schools and 2 schools for young people with social, emotional and mental health difficulties, based predominantly in East London at the minute. And I've been asked to talk about wellbeing and mindfulness in your early career. So I was just listening to Alana and Jackie and really building on what they were saying, you know, that I think the role that I play is very much about a connector, is very much a signposter. And in that way, my work within Women Ed is also about that. I'm not necessarily the expert about lots of different things, but I know lots of people who are, and building on Alana's words about networks, you know, as an individual, we really do have to take responsibility for connecting with lots and lots of different people. So I think personally, I've been in education since I started working many years ago, and I was always driven by the desire to support others, initially children and young people, but really that's developed into supporting other adults to self-improve in order to make a real difference to children and young people. And my own educational experience, I trained as a secondary teacher, secondary MFL teacher. I then moved very quickly into being very interested in PSHE, mental health, sex and relationship education, drug education, and really the holistic child. I've worked in school improvements. I have then worked in primary schools, and even then I've worked with early years settings too. So I do feel quite qualified to think about how all young people, children and young people, develop and learn. And I think I've never met anybody who does not have that same drive in education to want to make a difference to children and young people, whether they are 2 years old or 18 years old. But at the core of that is you. And actually, all the people that I've ever met who want to make a difference to children and young people, really, they can't make that difference unless they are happy and healthy themselves. I can see you having a little bit of trouble, Lizana, with the slides, but if you can try and move to the next one, that's brilliant. Right, brilliant. The quote underneath, that's really ominous, isn't it, that black square? I wonder what it's saying. The quote underneath, fantastic, thank you, Lizana. I really appreciate you being there today. So the quote there, waste not thy well-being, for it is thy wealth, by Leila Gifty Akita. That really struck me. As I said, we all want to make a difference to children and young people. But if we don't have good levels of well-being, then we have lost our wealth and we can't make that difference. You are the most important person in the world at the minute, because if you're not there, if you haven't got the energy, if you haven't got the get up and go, if you haven't got the reflective place in your head, then who else is going to support those children and young people to be the very best that they can? And really that's about balance. So I want you to kind of think of that as we're going through this session. I mean, I know it's a bit tricky to make this completely interactive, but I know people write in the chat. So feel free to write in the chat if ideas come up for you as we're talking. Okay, so next slide, please, Lizana. So, I mean, sorry for these obvious images, but I really saw this one and it made me really think about what we were talking about. So you have to be aware of what is draining you. That's a drain. You know, you are in a position at the beginning of your career where you will be passionate about making a difference for children and young people. But teaching, as Alison said initially, is a fantastic, rewarding career, but it is extremely challenging at times. And I think it's very specifically challenging. So you will be having thousands of interactions and decisions to make per day, whether you're working in an early years setting, a primary setting, a secondary setting, a further education setting, or you're actually working with parents. I was looking for research about the amount of the actual amount of those interactions, and it does run into the thousands. And not only are those interactions dialogue, but you will be making decisions based on those conversations, and that's draining. That's just in your professional life. Of course, you will be talking to parents, to colleagues, But your own friends and family, you're always making those decisions. You're always talking. You need to be aware of this. You're in a position at the beginning of your teaching career where you will have lots of knowledge, but you will be constantly developing that knowledge. You may be starting in a new school. You may be starting a new setting, which has completely different routines to where you've previously done your training. You may have started a new job. You'll be leading learning. You may not actually be used to leading learning consistently over every single day for the next term, for the next year, for the next 5 years. You will be learning about your pedagogy. You will be reflecting. You'll be building relationships and understanding how best to talk to this child, how best to communicate with this parent, how to work best with this colleague. What else drains you? Well, there's actually a global pandemic going on. You're actually in a very specific situation at the minute. You know, when I trained, that was not happening. When lots of us trained to teach, when lots of us began our career, this was not happening. Of course, it's throwing up opportunities. Of course, it's really hard. But you must be aware of how challenging this is for you and be kind to yourself about that. And I think my last point there about what drains you, and I think this is very prevalent amongst women and very prevalent amongst teachers, that we tend to have extremely high expectations of ourselves and elements of perfectionism. Mm-hmm. We're so desperate to make a change in people's lives and to keep on top of things and to do our absolute best, that sometimes we forget that we're real humans in the middle of that, and we don't look after ourselves. Okay, so I think that last bullet point I really want you to be aware of. Next slide, please, Lizana. So you may have seen this already, but this is something that somebody passed over to me, a leadership coach passed to me, which really supported me to help me find the balance in my life. Because what I'm trying to get you to think about is how to find that balance in your life. Because specifically at the beginning of your career, you will be feeling all those draining things and all those self-expectations. So this is a framework that has come from Japan, and people say that ikigai comes from the verb in Japanese ikiru, to live, and kai, meaning the realization of what one hopes for. So connected together, Japanese is a very conceptual language. This framework shows us the concept of a balanced life. We're focused on your career. You're focused on your career. You're focused on your job. But it's really, really, really important to have a look at all those sections on the Ikigai framework to support you to find your balance. So it's a really good idea, and you can do this with young people as well, to have this framework in front of you, to actually use it, to begin to write things on it, to check in with yourself. Because we're looking for that sweet spot in the middle, the Ikigai, lovely green, sage green colour right in the middle. And in order to get there, we have to be really aware and grow and nurture ourselves in all those different areas. So initially, it's a really good place to start to think, okay, in my life, what do I love? What am I good at? What does the world need? And what can I be paid for? And that paid for one is really interesting to me, because I've met a lot of people in education who are so passionate and so driven to make a difference to children and young people that they forget that they do need to look after themselves financially as well as emotionally. So finding that balance between those 4 areas will be really supportive to you. And I think what is really helpful about this is that you can literally have this framework in your planner, on your diary, in your living room, and just check in with yourself across a term. Because quite often what we do is we start a term, we start a project, we're very full of energy, we're raring to go, and then we get drained, we fall down, we feel lower and lower and lower. And at that point, at the bottom of that trough, we think we can't do anything anymore. We lose our self-confidence, we lose our self-esteem. We begin to think that we're useless and we'll never be good again. So we need to cut that off before we get there. And this can help us do that. So we're looking to draw our well-being from every element of our life. Now, when I looked at the title, I thought I could talk to you about different apps and ways to carry out well-being and mindfulness activities, but they're perfectly well available. You can go onto the Google Play Store, to the Apple Store, and find an app to put on your phone that are all really, really good. But the thing is about that is about taking the time and making a positive change in your head to say, I need to do this. Using the Ikigai framework can help you do that as well. But what this comes back to is taking the responsibility for your own well-being, for yourself. Nobody else can make you feel as good as you can make you feel. You need to be aware of how you're feeling. You need to be responsible for making that change within yourself, and you need to look around for tools, networks, colleagues to support you in that. Okay, so last slide, please, Lizana. So I just wanted to finish by saying, you know, I think you really need to be aware of what can drain you, because at the minute we have a global pandemic going on, but in your early career there are lots and lots and lots of things that can drain you, take your energy, and make you feel like you don't have the confidence to continue. But those are external factors. So you need to then be aware of that, take responsibility for finding your balance, ask for help, communicate with others, find your networks. And my last quote here is, I think Alana and Jackie have both mentioned it. In teaching, you can be stripped away because people need you so much, but you need to be yourself. You need to be yourself and continue to be yourself, because as Oscar Wilde has said there, everyone else is taken. Thanks very much. If you're in East London, you want to connect. If you're in the wider area of East London, I'm on Twitter as @KFallon, and I'm based in Newham. I'm happy to talk on the phone, talk on Zoom, and as soon as we get more events for London going, we'll connect with people there as well. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing, Kate. And I love the quote. It is so true. And I'm sure that everyone will take you up on the offer to come and visit in East London, where I'm based too. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Lovely. Our next speaker today is Emily Gent, and Emily is going to introduce herself, and I am going to try to give Emily some powers to upload her own presentation. So Emily, if you just bear with me 2 seconds. There you go. You have got the ability now to hopefully share. So if you could just let me know if you're okay with that.
Can everybody
yes, we can see you. Yes.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. So my name's Emily Gent, and I'm going to be talking about developing resilience as a teacher. And I wanted to first of all, I'll introduce myself in just a minute, but I just wanted us to think first of all about what resilience is, because we have all developed all kinds of resilience because of the different situations that we have been in. And I think that the essence of resilience is having the energy to be able to move forward with something. So I think that resilience is often about a combination of skills. So you have the skills of resilience, but you also have the energy to put those skills into place. I'm sure that we've been in schools before, in fact, in all types of different careers before, where we've seen that people have the skills for resilience because we've seen them do it before, but they have lost the energy to be able to deploy that resilience. And so many people have been talking about that today, which I've really loved. And I thought that, Kate, I love the Ikigai, Kate, that you've just been talking about, you know, which is that you do what you love. So in terms of energizing, so you might not need this right at the beginning of your career, but I do wonder whether you will need it as you move forward with your career. When you've been somewhere for 6 months or a year, and things start to really weigh on you because the responsibility, you start recognizing exactly what your responsibility is. People stop giving you so much leeway because you're not brand new anymore, and how you can energize yourself. And I've always loved, so I come out of an English background, English degree background, and I've always loved the way that the Russian formalists, you don't have to know anything about Russian formalism, but essentially what they said was that if you use language in a different way, you can see things anew. And it is seeing things anew that helps you to be energized. And when I think about seeing things anew in terms of energizing, when I think about seeing things anew in terms of energizing, I think about the sort of language that you might use about teaching and learning, about being in school. So I just wanted to think about the different types of careers that we've all had. I'm sure that you've all had different types of careers. You know, my daughter is currently working as a warehouse operator in Morrison's, and that's quite an interesting experience for her. She's learning all kinds of things. She's working mostly with men and learning how to work with men as an 18-year-old girl. It's quite interesting. She can only drive a forklift truck. All those things that I wouldn't expect her to have been doing it this summer, but because she's in year 13 and she hasn't had to do her A-level, she's been able to do all kinds of new things. Anyway, so I spent some of my youth living in the States. I went to live in the States when I was 18, and because I didn't really have any qualifications, I worked as a waitress in restaurants. If any of you have ever been to a restaurant in the US, you will know that the waitresses memorize the menu. They have all, you know, they know absolutely everything. So if they're asked about all the different salad dressings, they would be able to tell you what is in the salad dressing. It's a very, very, very different type of experience being waitress in the US than it is being waitress in the UK. So there was a real expectation of what I was supposed to be able to do when I was in the States, and that was very challenging. And then the other thing that I had to deal with in terms of my own resilience is that I had to learn to memorize the menu. So it wasn't just that I had to just smile and get the food on the table. I had to memorize the menu, but also I had to put up with the chefs. And in the 1980s in the States, most of the chefs were like this. So I would have to stand there while they just shouted at me. So in terms of being a woman in a working situation, I was literally just shouted at. And I developed resilience, honestly. You just need to have somebody like this shouting at you on a regular basis. After you've been looking after your baby all day, because I had a child as a very young woman, so I've been looking after my baby all day. I went to work and then was shouted at by chefs. So I learned a whole manner of sort of resilient behaviours. And I wanted us to think about the different types of resilience that we learn with that. So I learned that it's not always about the thing that is being said. It's often about the situation that is going on at that moment. So a chef is working in a very, very, very hot kitchen, and sometimes that they would just, I'm not suggesting it's acceptable, but sometimes that they would just start shouting at you. So you learn all kinds of resilience doing that. So I wanted to think about how the experiences that we have influence the way that we think about the world. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my history. So I've been a teacher, a head of department, an assistant head teacher, and I've been a head teacher. But I've also worked in the Nuffield Review. I worked for the research department at the University of Oxford, worked on the Nuffield Review, and bizarrely for Oxford, that was all about the impact of poverty on the choices that children make in schools, and also the way that teachers talk about choices to those students and the way that parents interact. So it's the triangle of school, parents, and the student. It's that triangle of impact. So I worked on that for years. I found that really, really interesting. So I did that, plus I've worked in schools as well, which has given me real insight into the way that both parents and schools are viewed by other people, and also the way that teachers interact with people within both a research and also the school environment. I think that teachers have a lot to say within the research community. I think that because I'd worked in schools for such a long time, so I've been an assistant head by the time I became a researcher, and then I came out of research and went back into schools again. But it was very, very useful to actually have the experience of schools, saying, schools just don't function like that. You wouldn't be able to do that in a school. You wouldn't be able to take time to do those types of things. So I now don't work in schools, and I now run a company called EduSites. So I co-own EduSites, and we have about 5,000 members. I do a huge amount of coaching. We provide resources for subject-based, but also I have heads of department who phone me frequently. So I do a lot of coaching. We're a non-profit. We cost tuppence halfpenny to join, and we provide huge amounts of resources. We're a very responsive department, company, and I absolutely love working with teachers. And one of the things that we've been doing recently is, so this is the kind of thing that I do every day. So I'm doing English, and this is the new thing that I've been working on. This is for GCSE students to start working in A-level level language, because they haven't been able to have the bridging work that a teacher would normally be able to work with them on. So we've been doing that. And then the other thing that I've been doing is I've been working with NQTs who are talking about their experience of going from their training into actual schools. And this is a blog that was written by Amy Unsworth. You can find her under Miss Unsworth on Twitter. So she's a big Twitter user. I too am an advocate for Twitter, but you do have to be careful the way that you use it. The algorithm for Twitter was actually created to construct arguments. It's actually, the algorithm actually encourages arguments, so you do need to be a little bit careful how you use that. But in terms of teachers getting together, I think that this is very, very useful. So this is so these two are the blogs that we've got so far. So this is Amy before she went into teaching, and then her NQT year. So I just want to talk briefly about the push and pull mechanisms that are an issue in terms of resilience for students in schools. So for teachers in schools. So the push mechanism, I think that one of the push mechanisms that happens for teachers while we're training is the idea that education is the answer to everything. So it's the answer to poverty, it's the answer to independence, it's the answer to female freedom, to self-actualization, to educating one's own children, to your own child's life expectancy. So you've got these huge data sets that are talking about the impact of education on somebody's life. And as teachers, we all know what those data sets are telling us, and that is a huge responsibility for people within schools. So they're the push mechanisms. In terms of the pull mechanisms, the question is how can you affect those? And I just want you to have a bit of a think about this to start off with. I've become a little bit obsessed. I'm not somebody who just thinks about the difference between poverty and wealth all the time, although I do think about it quite a lot. And I just wanted you to just think about this for a minute. So a student in a boarding school gets about £46,000 spent on them a year for them to be in boarding school. They have to live and they need food and that sort of thing, but they also don't have to pay for some of the things that secondary schools pay for, which is buses and that sort of thing. And then students in secondary schools, we get paid about £4,200 for a student in secondary schools. Now, I think that is a huge, huge difference. And so in terms of education, it is not always possible to fulfill all the promises that education is making to students and parents. That doesn't mean to say that you forget any sort of responsibility towards students, but like, sorry, I can't remember who the speaker was, the one before Kate. I beg your pardon, I can't remember your name, that's awful. It's going to come to me in a moment. But what she was saying is that you can't fulfill all of those things, but that you go in intending to. Okay, so we go in intending to, and I think that some of the gap between being resilient in a job, being able to do your job, and finding your job overwhelming, which I think is some of the resilience, which is some of the questions of resilience, is the gap between the expectation of what you can reasonably do and what you're finding unbearably difficult. So even though it's not possible to fulfill all those promises, there may be days when you are able to see some progress by some students, and it's magic. You will make a breakthrough with a group, tutor, or subject concept that you've been grappling with, and that is magic. And enjoy that when you get it, because it is the best part of the job. So what do I recommend? Like many people have talked about today, support systems are really, really important. So having friends that when you can't pick your child up from school because you've got a meeting unexpectedly and you've done this 3 times in a row and you haven't been able to pay your friend back, having a friend who says, that's okay, I will pick them up anyway. Sense of humour, being really, really well organised so that when you leave for school in the morning, like your children, you've got your bag all ready and you can just leave. So even if something terrible happens in the morning, it doesn't affect your whole day. Asking for help. Absolutely ask for help, because all teachers within schools all want to help. Everybody went into schools wanting to help, wanting to work positively within schools. So you will find that there's lots of people wanting to help. And then this is my absolute golden rule, okay, and this is where I'm going to finish. Do not get involved with the moaning, okay? So I'm not saying that moaners are wrong. Quite often what they're saying is absolutely right. It is untenable. The job is untenable. Often it is untenable. But as a difference between talking about Russian formalism and seeing something new as being energizing, moaning is a route to disarming yourself of any sort of psychic energy that you have to battle on the days when school feels just a little bit too extra, when it just feels unbearable. We all have those days where things feel absolutely unbearable, and it's very easy to go and chat to a moaner when things are feeling very, very, when they're feeling really unbearable. But that is the route to making you feel worse. So that's my golden rule, and I'm going to leave you with that. Okay, and I'm sorry, because I've been sharing my screen, I can't see if there's any questions that have come up.
Lovely, thank you so much, Emily.
Okay.
Just before I hand over to Viv, can I just ask that everyone try to mute their microphones, please, because we do get some noise coming through as well. Super.
Thank you, Lizana. Thank you very much, Emily. Really appreciated that. Enjoyed your kitchen reminiscences throughout that and the difference that makes. you showed an image of Amy Runsworth on one of your slides,
so
she's been shown it on Twitter already. Somebody's shown her that and connected with her, which is lovely. Thank you ever so much, Emily. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
I'd now like to move over to Lizana herself. Lizana is a Women Ed Network leader, but also she will share the work that she does. And I'm so grateful to Lizana for all of her work on this event. It's really appreciated.
Thank you, Ves. Thank you very much, everyone, and lovely to see you all online and to meet you virtually. Just a quick introduction to myself. I am working at the University of East London. I'm the program lead for the Masters in Leadership and Education. But before I started at East London, I was also working as a ski director. And before that, I have been the director of a training school. And I have also been the induction tutor for many NQTs and RQTs. And my own MA focused on early career professional development. So very passionate about the topic and delighted to be part of today and to work with Viv on this. So my particular focus today is surviving and thriving as an ITT, NQT and an early careers teacher, and also touching again, similar to Alison this morning, on the Chartered College of Teaching membership. So I was very lucky this week. I've spoken to an awful lot of NQTs and spoke to about 50 of them about this issue of surviving and thriving as an early careers teacher. And I said to them, so just explain to me, what do you think we would need in a package to make sure that we can actually cope well in our context? And they come up with the following. First of all, they said you need to understand your context, your school, the learners, and also they involve strong relationships with people all the time, which I think is a really important point. Those relationships, those lasting ones, but not just only in your own department or your own year group, but across, and also then the emphasis on networking as we've had today. In addition to that, then they said it's really important to speak to your context about the relevant support that you need to get within that context. Like, for example, what kind of programs would be in place for an NQT or an early careers teacher? Will they be mentored? Will they be coached? Will they be supported in terms of leadership pathways? It's really important to ask these questions early on rather than try to catch up on those. So try to think, what could you ask and what could you find out more? One person said, and this is on one of the bullet points, you have to know your entitlement. You need to understand what you need to enable you to proactively ask those questions. What's also interesting was they came up with resilience to manage constant change. And what really sort of came out from this was that they felt they worked in places where change is the constant, really, and they needed to learn to adapt to that. And having that understanding that change happens all the time is a really important point for them to think about to enable them to survive. The next bullet point, mentoring. All of them said as an NQT, mentoring was invaluable and also further on, but also then becoming involved as a mentor. And that was a really interesting one. We talked about that in a bit of detail. And what many of them told me was that by mentoring, they were able to explain their practice, they were able to think more deeply about things, and they felt as though they became part of a learning community. So mentoring plays a key part, not only in being supported, but also supporting others, but stretching your own learning. And of course, then coaching. So many of them were thinking about now being coached. What does that mean? And how could that help them as well? And becoming an inclusive educator, understanding it's not just about special education needs, but it's also about all the other differences and needs that children have, and also colleagues, and working well with others, and the support pastoral element of that as well. Coming back to that again, know your entitlement was what they told me. If you understood what you needed, you could go and ask for it, and you could negotiate better. So it's always important to know what you are entitled to and what support you can get. So I know Sam is talking about the early careers framework later on as well, and Jackie already touched on that. So that's really great that we all are sort of in synergy with that one. And then also the next one, continue to grow and develop through CPD and your own learning. And that also means continuous learning through your own reading, discussing with others, journal clubs. Some of the groups also joined a journal discussion group, which was really interesting too. So find different ways proactively to help yourself to continue to grow and reflect. Many of them highlighted humor as an important point, as well as then enjoying the job. Find some joy in every day, some gratitude. Many of them kept gratitude journals where they would post 3 good things about their day, and that really helped them when things were difficult to page back, to have a look at positive things that they've experienced. And then also joining collaborative networks. And that's also where it ties in then again with the Chartered College of Teaching and being a member. Now, like Jackie, I'm tremendously proud to be a fellow. And I really cannot tell you how much we all gain from not only the network, but the support Alison provides and her team. And I just want to touch on how can you become a member as well. But before I do that, just highlighting then Women Ed as a member, as a network, as well as BA MEed, really useful. And then the Chartered College of Teaching. And I also want to highlight that subject associations are really important to look at and to pick up on. I can see the polls just dropped in. Fantastic work, well done. The subject associations, if you click on the link, I will make my PowerPoint available to you. You will see that there's a subject association directory, and that is a detailed resource produced by Professor Mirandis, and it includes every single subject association as well as institutions like UCIT and NASBET, and also the Head Teachers Union, etc., the whole lot. So do have a look at the documents, it's incredibly useful. Then going to the Chartered College, just to highlight again and to stress really what Alison was saying, really important to join if you can, because it highlights what matters most, and it emphasises the importance of the teacher's role to support children. And it also explains the education landscape. You can find more of this and more information on the Chartered College's website. But just to stress, it is incredibly supportive. It helps you with understanding your placements, schools, portfolios, advice there on job applications. It is fantastic and it's really worth joining. In terms of membership, if you're a student, you can join free. And if you then at NQT, the membership is £1.88 monthly, which I think is a very reasonable fee for such wonderful support. And then also in terms of then just a member, not just a member, £3.75 monthly. So well worth investing in yourself and your learning, and also joining a wonderful supportive community. You will see here the Early Careers Teacher Hub, and I know Alison also showed you a wonderful video clip on that, but just to share as well, there is some wonderful articles available there, events usually that you can look at. And I want to stress there's also the journal database. A lot of your mentors will tell me that they are interested in finding out more about the most up-to-date research. The actual database, EBSCO, is available, as well as the Impact Journal, which is a peer-reviewed journal, which is fantastic, and wonderful tips, ideas and thoughts are being shared there by colleagues as well. There are also other resources. There is a book titled Surviving and Thriving in Secondary School, and there's also one on Secondary Behaviour Management, the Essentials. And I know Sarah will also talk to you a little bit about her book a little later. So I know that we probably would need to save a little bit of time on questions today, and I whizzed through that really quickly because of time, and we need to obviously move on. So if I could ask you to put any questions that you might have in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer. And if you could participate in this poll, that would be fantastic too. So I will conclude with that. I know it's been a bit quick and rapid, but I'm keen to hand over to Vivian again to introduce our next speaker.
Hello, thank you very much for that, Lizana. Really appreciate it. So much useful information on the Chartered College, which will already have answered quite a few questions in the chat. Thank you. Our next speaker is Rachel Loft House. Rachel and I share a common link with the Northeast, so we always enjoy chatting and talking about that. And she wants to talk through how to make an impact to build our profession. Are you there, Rachel?
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful, thank you very much indeed. Can you share your screen, or is Lizana still doing it?
Rachel, I've just given you powers so you can share.
Okay.
So if you go to share screen, you should be okay.
Thank you, Rachel. Over to you.
Okay, is that working?
It is.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
It is lovely to be here, despite the fact that I'm suffering from lockdown hair, anxieties, and all of those sorts of things that we're experiencing so many weeks into this really strange period of our lives. And as many of you know, this original conference was planned long before lockdown. In fact, it was the last thing I was about to do, and quite, tightly locked down, we couldn't do it. The reason that I'm interested in joining you today is because I'm particularly interested in how teachers learn to become teachers. That sounds like a really daft statement, but it's a genuinely important one, because whatever you think, none of us are born teachers. We all become teachers, and we become teachers through multiple experiences and multiple opportunities for change and development, and multiple decisions that we make. And in our becoming of teachers, we start to build a legacy, and we build a legacy from the practice that we conduct, whether that's in our single classroom, whether that's with our colleagues in our staff rooms, whether that's when we're talking with parents, whether that's when we're advocating for certain principles and practices. We become and inhabit a set of values that together contribute to our profession making a genuinely phenomenal impact. So just a tiny bit about me, just in case anybody's wondering. I started teaching 30 years ago. I taught for 10 years in the northeast of England, and then I've worked in teacher education and research for 20 years. First of all at Newcastle University, and more recently at Leeds Beckett University. And it was great to hear a shout out from Alana to Leeds Beckett University and my colleague Damien Page for their support of the BA MEed network. So my interest, as I've said, is in how teachers learn, how they become teachers and how they learn. And in particular, I'm interested in how they learn with and from others. So I'm particularly interested, for example, in mentoring for teachers in the early career, or mentoring as teachers move into new roles and they need an expert, critical friend who can support them because they've been there before, they've walked the walk, they can give them insights and expert guidance. I'm also particularly interested in coaching and how teachers and school leaders and others within the education landscape can learn with and from each other through those coaching conversations. And as a result of those interests, I was lucky enough when I joined Leeds Beckett University to be able to set up a research and practice centre called Collective Ed, which is the Centre for Coaching or Mentoring, Coaching and Professional Learning. It is another network with Ed stuck on the end of it. It's a little bit different to some because it is situated within a university, but I think it's becoming a very inclusive and very hopefully forward-looking network of people. So I want to introduce you to these two characters. These two characters, Jerry and Sabrina, I've come across again recently on Twitter. And as soon as I came across them on Twitter, my kind of whole being swelled with pride. And the reason for that is because I knew these two ladies, these two women, at the very beginning of their teaching career, when they were just becoming teachers. These two women, Sabrina and Jerry, were my PGC students over a decade ago. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about them in a while. But I wanted to introduce to them because although I'm flagging them up as individuals who I find inspirational now, and although I am deeply humbled to be connected with them on Twitter, and I enjoy knowing them, it isn't about who you know that matters. Sometimes I think in education we get a bit swept up with our celebrity teachers, our influencers. When we're working in schools, we can be a bit absorbed by who has the loudest voice in the staff room, or who seems to be the fastest climber up the career ladder. And we can unfavorably compare ourselves to those people, or we can try and attach ourselves to those people. And that can sometimes be an influential, valuable relationship, but it can also sometimes be one in which you start to feel like an imposter in your own skin because you're not them. So sometimes I think we need to remember that whilst we live in a world where it's easy to connect with people, it's easy to relate to other people, and it's easy to aspire to be people, it isn't so much who you know, but it's what you do and how you do it that matters. I absolutely agree with our previous speakers that the networks that we are part of matter as well. So in terms of the who we know within our networks, that makes a difference, because rather than it being about the single icon or the single guru or the single celebrity influencer, it's about the collective. It's about the shared purpose and the shared voice. It's about the ability to take collective action. So networks matter hugely. Being part of something. And you don't always have to be at the heart of it. You can sometimes be part of a network and perhaps be described as a bit of a lurker, on the fringes, but learning from, contributing to in a small, quiet way, as opposed to necessarily feeling that it only matters if you're at the centre and at the hub. The networks matter because they help us to build a sense of purpose that is shared with others. And that's one of the ways, in my understanding, that we become more resilient, because we stop feeling isolated and alone. So just going back to the what you do and how you do it that matters. Jerry and Sabrina are absolutely inspirational head teachers. And I've already told you that I taught them in their PGCE years. They both studied Geography PGCE at Newcastle University. I am ashamed to say I cannot remember whether they were in the same peer group in the same year or 2 or 3 years apart, and I can't find any records, and I've forgotten to ask them. But what I can remember about them is that they did stand out. They stood out as young women just as much as they stand out now as head teachers. And they stood out not because they were celebrities, not because they were the loudest people in the group, but because they thought carefully, deeply, critically. They reflected on their practice, they shared their vulnerabilities, and they demonstrated significant empathy and humility from the very beginning of their careers. So I seem to have drifted away a little bit from the title of this PowerPoint or of this session. The title had this notion of practice, so building our practice, having legacy from our practice so that we can build and contribute to the profession. And I just want to go back to that because I mentioned that what Sabrina and Jerry stood out for from very early days was the extent to which they cared about their practice, they reflected on their practice, they shared their practice with humility and vulnerability, but also with a complete drive to learn. And what was clear then for them and many others, to be fair, of my PGC students, was this very strong connection between who they were and how they practiced, and who they were that was carried forward in their beliefs about teaching and learning and other people. So for me, there's something here about the practices of teachers, not being just a set of commands that we follow, not just being a set of routines and procedures that we put into action, but being intimately connected with the things that we believe about others, about the value of our subjects, about the value of education per se, about community, society, about children, about young people, about development, about fairness. Those beliefs, those values are articulated in our practice. So just for a minute, remember, I know we're in very strange times, but remember the last time you stood in a classroom and you let a group of children in. So if you're thinking about those times when you stood in a classroom and you've let a group of children in, think about the way in which that happened. Think about the way in which they were welcomed into your space. Think about whether you even define it as your space or their space. Think about the routines that you adopt as children and young people walk into that classroom, into that place where they're going to learn with you and with each other. What do you do when you welcome children in? What do they do as they enter? How did that first 1 or 2 minutes of the day, or first 1 or 2 minutes of the lesson, how was that shaped by the things that you believe about them as learners? Or was it shaped about the things that you believe about the way in which your school operates? Do you share amongst the school a set of routines that you all feel a sense of ownership with and commitment to because they work, including those little routines about welcoming children into your room? How do those beliefs become articulated in that very first thing that you do as you start your day or you start your lesson? Welcoming children into the room. And then how do those beliefs track through the whole lesson? How does the language you use with children help you shape their experience? How does the relationships that you build shape their experience? How is the language and the relationships based on the beliefs that you carry with you about what it is to be a teacher and the kind of teacher you want to be? Early on in this day, it was recognised that after about 3 years, most teachers have developed a set of routines, and that it isn't a bad thing to ask yourself which ones of those need to be disrupted. And that's critical, because one of the things that we know is that as our practice becomes routine, it can become procedural, and we can forget why we're doing things. We can forget that sometimes the things that we've adopted as practices actually create tension with the things that we believe as people and as educators. And also, they can just become a bit stale and a bit stagnant. Things don't tend to work so well when they become stale and stagnant. So our practice is something that we carry with us, but can also stagnate. And the good news about that, of course, is that we can take time and make an effort to question that and to check in with ourselves and to check in with more recent research, or to check in with other people to find out which bits of our practice can be altered. And this is really good news, because this is how we become more expert teachers. And I would say that Jerry and Sabrina are examples of people who will have gone through phases of being in practice, becoming more expert, feeling vulnerability, thinking again about what they're doing, entering a new phase of their career, starting again, wondering if they're in the right place, holding true to their values, and landing in a leadership role which is utterly suited to them. It's utterly suited to their skills, their mindset, their values, their beliefs. And these 2 young women are amongst the most inspirational leaders I think we have in our schools today. as a result of their advocacy for others, their voices are now being heard as well. So 2 examples there of very recent articles that they wrote or they contributed to in the education press, which reflected on the quality of the leadership decisions they were having to make in this time of crisis. As they were struggling to maintain their schools as communities, as the community of their schools disappeared out into their wider community, as they were preparing to bring back those children and young people into their schools, they're making the most complicated decisions, which will be translated into practice, but which are hugely rooted and influenced in their values. This, for me, is about how we build a profession. And just to draw this to a close, you're becoming teachers. You're at the beginning, most of you, of a career, which I hope, genuinely hope, is one that you learn to love and you keep loving, and it keeps loving you back. But you are becoming, and in fact, you will always be becoming, because we are never the finished product. But at the present, many of you, either as NQTs, about to join the profession, or as early career teachers in those first few years of the profession, will worry that the enormous amount of effort that you put in every single day isn't having the impact you want it to have. You'll feel those moments of disquiet and tension when you question whether you're good enough. You'll also hopefully be wondering what sort of teacher you'll be becoming. You'll have aspirations, you'll have dreams. You'll have lots of role models. You'll get loads and loads of advice. You see that advice, those role models here today. But you're still in that present place of vulnerability and a present place of anticipation. You'll have good days and bad days. I promise you, those continue. Genuinely, you never shake those off, but you'll learn to respect both the good and the bad days. You'll realize, because of who you are and the opportunities you see around you, that there are many potential roles and routes you might take through this career. You'll always be learning, you'll always be adapting, you'll always be hugely, hugely busy. If you're not, I'm afraid you're doing something wrong. But that's not to say that you compromise your well-being. What it's to say is this is a job that's worth doing because there's so much of it to get your teeth into. And that's a fantastic place to be because you'll never be bored. In the future, as you move into future roles, as you consolidate the present in your teaching now, as you move into leadership, some of you move into new and diverse practices, whether those are in schools or in other forms of professional career, perhaps in education, all of those things will stay. But you will seem more centered, you will feel more confident, you will feel that the impact you have is being recognized. You will feel more secure in your expertise. You'll know what works and you'll know what to keep doing. You'll have more confidence to be the sort of teacher you want to be. Very importantly, you will be more informed. The experiences that you gather along the way, the networks you join, the reading you do, the study you do, all of that will inform you. And through becoming more informed, you will be an even stronger advocate for children and young people. That means that you will raise your voice for them. You will not let things lie. And it will be coming from a place of passion, but also coming from a place of expertise, experience, and information. Less naivety, more security. That advocacy will therefore be stronger and stronger. Your voice will matter. And as all of those things develop and emerge in you, as a single person, as a single teacher, you will make a significant contribution to build the profession. The profession needs you, doesn't need you to sacrifice yourself, but it needs you because you matter. Your voice, your passions, your enthusiasms, your expertise, your commitment mean that you belong in this profession. And that transition from becoming to belonging is one of the most wonderful personal and professional experiences that you can have. And it happens step by step, day by day. And it really makes a difference. It makes a difference to you, and it makes a difference to all those other people who your work will touch. So your present matters because it shapes the future. And it doesn't just shape your future, but it shapes the future of our profession. All of the advice that you've had so far about the early career framework, about the chartered teacher scheme, about perhaps thinking about further study and masters, about thinking about your career on a ladder, about thinking about yourself and your good and your bad days, your mental health, your well-being, your resilience. It matters because you matter, because you belong to the profession, and because by belonging to the profession, your impact will be one which is long-lived and has legacy. And that's me done.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rachel. Really appreciate that. I can see colleagues are putting hands up. If you could just contribute in the chat, we will be able to answer your questions there. Back to you, Vivian.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you for joining us. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Karen Giles to the event. I've known Karen for quite a while, and I have respected her, looked up to her, relied on her, depended on her for so much myself personally. So I just want to say that, Rachel, Karen, to you, and really delighted that you're here to join us. And I know everybody else will hang on your every word, because I always do. Thank you very much, Karen, and over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you can hear me. I don't have any slides today, so you know, you're going to have to watch keenly as I bring on all sorts of things to keep you entertained. The only reason that Viv looks up to me is that I'm about 5'9", so but maybe it's not just that. So I hope that you are really looking forward to being newly qualified teachers next year. I just remember when I was a newly qualified teacher in the 1800s, how excited I was to start and how proud I was to start being a teacher. So I've been asked today, and I'm really privileged to be asked to speak today about the importance of mental health and well-being. So a little bit about me. I'm a head teacher of a primary school in Wembley. I've been head there for about 17 years and was a newly qualified teacher about 32 years ago. However, my school is very diverse, very large, and so therefore there have been all sorts of challenges that I've watched newly qualified teachers go through and teachers subsequently. So I know that you've already heard from great colleagues who have been talking about support, well-being, mindfulness, resilience, surviving and thriving. So thank you to those colleagues, Kate, Alana and Jackie, for all of that. And also Rachel, thank you very much for your recent presentation where you've reminded me about the fact that I too have what I call a friend tour, which is a friend and a mentor who's just audits my stresses or stressors on a monthly basis. So I always like to start with a definition. That's the teacher in me. And mental health, we all have mental health, and it's a spectrum. So being mentally healthy is coping with life's ups and downs, feeling in control to a certain degree, and I think that we've been challenged by this pandemic and lockdown in terms of control, but also asking for help. So as a newly qualified teacher, you have found your vocation, you're excited about starting, you're passionate, it's addictive, it's eclectic, it's an honor to serve, it's a privilege to serve. However, this is really about putting the oxygen mask on yourself first. If you think about being in a plane, the oxygen is compromised, the mask falls, you're tempted to put it on everybody around you first, but actually it's time for you to put it on yourself first so that you can enable others. So thinking about the responsibility for mental health, and I'm glad that Kate alluded to this. Obviously your employer has a duty of care to your well-being, but your well-being is your business. Only you can manage your time and bespoke it to how you function best, because we're all so different. You can find lots of tools online. I know that during the lockdown, we've all been very resilient, but we've also been very resourceful about trying to ensure that we can find lots of different things that suit us. You can have a look on YouTube, and and this is really about finding the tools that are going to work for you in terms of your workload and your life-work balance. Again, thank you, Jackie, for reminding us that it's life-work, not work-life. So workload and work-life balance, or life-work balance, are cited by educationsupport.org.uk as the top work-related reasons for a deterioration in our mental health. And so prevention is better than cure. You choose to work in particular schools, and hopefully when you went to visit the schools that you're now going to be working in, that you chose schools where the climate suited you. You have to think in the dark night of the soul, what is going to work for you and what you have to do. So hopefully you've been very discerning about choosing schools where there is a climate which is great for you. I encountered an article which is called The 5 Ways to Wellbeing. And the 5 ways are to connect, be active, take notice, keep learning, and give. And again, those aren't pertinent to COVID times, but they're also pertinent to life beyond. In terms of connection, there are so many organisations that are set up for your mental health and well-being. And just to name a few which are specifically supportive in terms of your mental health, you can connect to, as I've mentioned before, educationsupport.org.uk. You have the Samaritans, the Mental Health Foundation, Mind, Black Dog Institute, Beyond Blue, and Rethink. In addition to, obviously, the resources that are available via your union and other networks that you've heard from today. Education Support, particularly Education Support UK, is a charity which has a specialist helpline that can support you, provide counselling. They have a whole host of other services, and they may suggest things like exercise, a reduction of artificial stimulants, more sleep, meditation, mindfulness. For me, I'm really trying to remember to turn off some of the notifications that I have that keep pinging at me on all of my different devices, and perhaps sometimes stepping back from social media. I don't know, am I being, because I want to be able to show certain bits and pieces that I've pulled together. Is that okay, Lizana? Can I be seen so I can show some bits and pieces?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. You can do that.
Right,
Yep,
okay.
that's fine. I'll just stop sharing.
Oh, there we go. Lovely. Okay. So when I was talking about lots of different things, so when we were talking about exercise, yoga mats, just showing some of the things that work for me. There's my cycle helmets, and whichever you use, whatever the things that you are that you use. This is typical teacher in me, just trying to use real resources, getting that balance. We talked about the artificial stimulants. However, oh, not that one. No, you're not allowed to do that one. Vitamin D, for those of us who need that, particularly during these times. Thinking about being healthy. So water, hydrating. But I think the key thing for me, sleep. Regulating our sleep. When we have these deadlines that we have to meet, we tend to compromise our sleep. We go to bed very late, we wake up very early. And whenever we compromise our sleep, whenever we get out of a routine in that regard, there are so many things, our perspective differs. And so therefore we suffer in those ways. So going back to some of those things, we've also, some of the therapies that will be suggested. So, you know, you can have talking therapies, medication, and just try and seek those out. You know, if you seek those out without stigma, without shame, there's strength in seeking early help, and find someone who is going to nurture and support you. Even if it's finding somebody who is going to be an advocate for you, a voice for you when you're not feeling strong enough to speak for yourself. Embrace the concept of self-care. I don't just mean face packs. I don't just mean mani-pedis. I'm really thinking about boosting your well-being and just taking notice. There are 7 questions that I've been asking all members of my staff before they come back to school. And I call them the Magnificent 7. So how are you in yourself? There's a very Caribbean way of asking, how are you? Sometimes in the UK, we'll say, how are you? And you say, fine. And it's very trite and it doesn't give any indication as to how you really feel. And sometimes there are questions that you need to ask of yourself. So how do I feel in myself? How are my family and friends? You might have suffered a bereavement. What happens within your family and friends also affects you. Do you have any concerns? And what are they? What are my coping strategies? So many people who have been speaking with me have been sharing their coping strategies, whether it's painting by numbers, crochet, embroidery, gardening, decorating, all sorts of things that they've discovered. And that's part of the just learning. And how am I getting to work? You may be experiencing or anticipating stress in terms of your travel to work and what that's going to entail. Am I concerned about any of my colleagues? So this is not just about you, but there may be colleagues that you're concerned about. And what can my mentor, my year head, my head teacher, my union, education support, my networks do for me? Be explicit about the kinds of things that you think are going to really help you, what you want, what you need, what you desire. And I know that I was always guilty as a class teacher of spending a very long time putting together learning objectives, success criteria, lesson plans. You would perhaps spend 3-4 hours creating a lesson plan, and it would be delivered maybe in 45 minutes. However, have you put together, and will you pledge to put together some kind of lesson plan for yourself? And the lesson really is your mental health plan, but in the same, using some of the same criteria that you would use in a good and effective lesson plan. So what is your mental health objective? What is your mental health intention? How will you get the stamina that is needed to be a really good and long-standing teacher? This is not just about the first 2 years. This is about the first 32 years. How are you going to challenge yourself? What is your differentiation? So for me, it might be yoga or cycling or power walking or weight training. But for you, what is it? What works for you? how will you deal with the misconceptions? So there will be some things that you will start and perhaps you're not going to finish. So what are your misconceptions? How do you deal with them? The same way that you would deal with misconceptions in a lesson. And how interactive are my resources? So it's not just so much about reading about things and hearing about things in theory, but actually that's why I have these tangible resources. How interactive are your resources for keeping yourself mentally fit and ready? And I really want to close with just going back to everything that we've said about being 10% braver. I know that Viv and I have perhaps had this conversation when we talk about 10% braver, but actually with your mental health, sometimes if you differentiate and sometimes if it's something bespoke to you, it's being 20% braver or 50% braver or 100% braver or 200% braver. And I know that one of our panelists here, one of our colleagues, was asked the question quite early on, how are women with mental health challenges supported? Well, the answer, I think, is that you disclose when necessary. Go into your school, meet with somebody. If you feel that you need to have your challenges supported, have a conversation with somebody in a confidential way so that you know that you feel secure and you feel safe. And sometimes the mental health challenges, particularly being a woman, can be around the 4 M's. They can be around menstruation, can be around maternity, motherhood, menopause, whatever your mental health challenge is. Have a conversation with somebody, and in doing that, you too are being 10% braver. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you for that thought-provoking talk. Our next speaker is Bucky, and she is going to talk to us about imposter syndrome. Bucky, can you hear me?
I can, Lizana. Can you hear me?
Yes, fantastic. Right.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you.
You've got your badge on, Buki.
Yes.
We can, yes.
Okay, great. So let's take 2. All right. Okay, so welcome everyone and good afternoon. My name is Buki Yusuf, so I'm a secondary science teacher, excuse me, a senior leader in a special school, and I'm also a qualified coach. I'm also a network leader for Women Ed London, and I've been involved with them actually from the very beginning, as well as the coach, I offer coaching through BA MEed as well. So what I'm going to be talking about very briefly is imposter syndrome and how this can actually prevent us from reaching our goals and what we can actually do to limit this impact. So picture this. You've got the job in the school that you have wanted to work in, okay? Imagine the excitement, imagine the joy, imagine the celebration. It's great. You feel like you're going to boss it. But maybe just before you start, or maybe as you start, or maybe during the early days or partway through your role, things start to change a little bit. So just let me move this over. And you have a number of thoughts that come in. The basically says, I'm not good enough. Maybe they've made a mistake. Maybe I'll find out, they'll find me out and actually see I'm not really up to the task. And as a result of this, you hide yourself away. You step back and it diminishes your role. This is an example of imposter syndrome in action. So on the screen, just move this over because unfortunately on my screen, I've got partly blocked out anyway, but you've got a definition of imposter syndrome that I actually got from Wikipedia because there's lots of different definitions. But the key aspect that combines all of them is this that I've highlighted. People doubt their accomplishments. Now, in short, that basically means this. You doubt whatever you've achieved, okay? There's always doubt. Now, with regards to that, it can actually have 2 types of impact. Impact upon the role that you actually do and a physiological impact on yourself. I put a fist just to represent, or, you know, like a boxing glove, just to represent, it can be a jarring experience over time. And there are a number of things that it can actually have an impact upon. So in terms of how it impacts upon our role, ultimately, it can maybe lead to you not actually asking for help. Maybe you might be a perfectionist. Maybe you might be an expert. You'll classify yourself that, and you've always known what to do, or you've got high standards and expectations of yourself. And by asking, it may make you look less than, and people may then have doubt, or so you feel in your mind. That then leads to procrastination. You may tend to over-prepare and reinforce in your mind that you have to work really hard in order to be able to be good at what you do and succeed. And this may in turn lead ultimately to burnout. Physiologically, there are a number of things it can actually have. Increased self-doubt. You're constantly thinking about what you should be doing, but you don't feel great about yourself. And it can also, because of these doubts, the narrative in your mind, it may actually lead you to avoid opportunities. Someone may recognize the skills that you may bring to a role. They can see potential in you. They may think, oh, you'd be good to be involved in this. But because the internal narrative in your own mind, you may actually step back and avoid those opportunities. So what I want to think about is what we can actually do as part and have as part of our lifelong toolkit. Because as has been mentioned before in some of the previous discussions already, it doesn't always go away when you actually start a new role, or when you face criticism, or when things don't go according to plan. That's when the imposter syndrome can actually rear its ugly head. What we can actually think about are some of the toolkits we can actually have that actually help us to minimize that. So the first thing, don't believe everything you hear, even in your mind. What is the narrative that's actually going through your mind? And in order to actually try and deal with this, you need to actually give yourself time and space just to step back and think through, how do I need to reword the narrative? And when you do that, I think you should ask yourself these three quick questions. What exactly do you say to yourself? Why? And what evidence do you have to back this up? Now, the why is important because it's a question of thinking, where did that narrative actually come from? So you may think, oh, I'm not quite good enough because. Is that your voice? Is it something that you may have said to yourself when you were younger, as you're growing up? Or maybe it was something that someone said to you one time that you have then internalized. Because if that is the case, it may have been applicable then, but it's no longer relevant. So you need to actually try and rewire that. And always thinking back, what evidence do you have to back up what you're thinking? Now, what may help is to note down your achievements over time. Or if you're creative like me, you might want to have a success jar. So literally writing down any little successes you actually achieved on a post-it note and putting it inside the jar, so that if you have those doubts or those low points, or even want to look back over a period of time of what you've achieved, you literally can actually go into your jar and actually have a look at what you've actually seen and done. Now, I've used this image to represent that you may see some opportunities way off in the distance, and you can see them and they're slowly coming towards you, and you may think, I see it, but no, I'm not sure that I'm right up to actually meeting the challenge of this new opportunity. And I share a quote by Richard Branson, and the fact that if somebody offers you an opportunity, and even if you can't do it 100%, I think sometimes we tend to think, oh, you know, we must be able to do it expertly or full out. And if we can't do that, then we shouldn't actually take up the opportunity. We need to decline it. Even if you cannot do it, say yes and then learn how to do things later. And I think many of us can actually subscribe to that and say, actually, this is how we actually learned and we've risen to the challenge, sometimes in better ways than we expected. The key here is striving for progress, doing something, but not perfection, because none of us are perfect. And there'll always be something we can improve, but it doesn't mean to say that we're not making a difference. If that is a challenging endeavor to undertake by yourself, I suggest coaching. Coaches and mentors have helped me immeasurably, particularly in tackling my own imposter syndrome. And just to quickly define, with a mentor, they may be someone who's actually done the role that you're doing, or you know, has understand your experience, and they'll actually guide you explicitly by telling you what to do and helping your progress. Whereas a coach what they tend to do is they ask questions to facilitate your thinking. So you may think of things from a different perspective, but they don't give you the answer. They allow you to find your own solutions. Now, I know some people are asking, so where could you find a coach? Obviously through Women Ed. So if you are on Twitter, you've got lots of different Women Ed regions you can actually go to, or even the Women Ed website. If you Google Women Ed, you can find the website and look at, find ways of actually requesting for a mentor or a coach. LBGT Ed and the Disability UK Ed also have ways of actually offering support, particularly through mentorship, and the same with BA MEed, where they've actually got an explicit coaching program for BAME educators. But more importantly, one of the things that can actually help us change our internal narrative and help put a limit upon the effects of imposter syndrome is the belief. And this could actually be part of an affirmation in the fact that no matter what you are facing, there is something inside you that can always overcome that particular obstacle. But I end by actually reminding us that we don't have to do this by ourselves. And I can, say for myself, what's helped me overcome the imposter syndrome, and particularly the negative narrative that I had in my own mind, were a number of women over the years who've helped me to see myself in different ways and enabled me to actually take up opportunities that I would never have imagined at the start of my teaching career. So tap into your networks, those that you know have got your support and actually can help you navigate your way as you overcome your imposter syndrome, so that you can stand proud and boss it if you want to, but you'll avoid imposter syndrome from stopping you from reaching your goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Buki. Fabulous responses on the chat. Do help yourself to the wonderful comments there about how so many people are recognising everything you're saying. And I think the important thing is that you've suggested ways to tackle imposter syndrome, because it doesn't have to be there, does it? Such a huge Women Ed topic.
Okay, thank you, Vivian. All right, okay. All right, okay, thank you so much.
So you need to stop sharing.
Oh, I thought I had done. Let me just go through. Oh gosh, I
Yep,
always.
it's all fine.
Lizanna's done it for you.
Thank you so much, Lizanna. Thank you. Bless you. Bless you.
Thank you, Bod. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us, and sorry for the time being slow. But I'm really delighted now to welcome Sarah Mullin. I think Buki is still there. There we go. I'm really delighted to welcome Sarah Mullin. Such an enthusiastic, such a powerful Women Ed voice. So supportive in creating resources, and she's going to tell you about some of those herself. So Sarah wants to talk about navigating your early career in education, and she'll be arriving shortly. Loving watching the comments here and on Twitter. Thank you so much for the lovely comments that we'll be passing on to all the panelists today about the difference this is making for you. One person said she doesn't feel so isolated anymore, and that's just fantastic. We absolutely love that. Thank you very much, and keep commenting, keep chatting. There's still 240 of you hanging on in there, and you absolutely need to do that to get to Deb Outhwaite and Sam Twistleton. Brilliant in that. Brilliant opportunities to come. How are we doing, Lizanna?
I'm waiting for Sarah to pop up. Sarah, are you ready?
Hello, can you see me?
We can see you, and you are a host, so you can start sharing your slides.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm Sarah Mullin. I'm a deputy head teacher, and I'm also researching the underrepresentation of women in secondary school leadership for my doctorate in education. I'm really proud to be a founding fellow of the Chartered College of Teaching, and I'm a huge advocate for Women Ed. There are some great resources available, such as the Early Career Hub, and there's loads of free networking events for you to enjoy. By coming to this conference today, you've shown that you're committed to growing and developing as a research-informed practitioner, which is brilliant. Our children and young people deserve to have teachers just like you who are striving to provide the best possible learning experience for our children. So, as you can see from this incredible lineup of speakers today, you are entering what will be an exciting career with limitless opportunities. Every single one of us were where you are now many years ago. We understand and we recognise your excitement, your nerves, your ambitions, your worries. And so my presentation just urges you really to aim high, dream big, and be proud to be a teacher. Firstly, I'd like to say a very warm welcome to the teaching family. You may have had part-time jobs in the past, or maybe you've had another career before becoming a teacher, but being in our profession, it's really special. Teaching is a vocation. We feel that we've been called to give children and young people the very best start in life. As teachers, we're naturally caring people. We just love to help. You will be surrounded by teachers in your own school, on social media, and even teachers around the world who will be there to support you every step of the way. Connect with us on Twitter. Ask us for help, learn from us, and let us learn from you. It's fantastic to see the passion, the enthusiasm, and the innovation of teachers who are early in their careers. You have so much to offer. You are the future of education. Teaching is a way of life, and it will become a huge part of your identity. You've chosen one of the most important jobs there is, the profession that creates all of the other professions. You will be shaping the hearts and minds of children for the rest of their lives. You will be helping them to maximise their learning potential. You will be giving them the very best start in life, helping them to realise their aspirations. It's important to enjoy this journey, embrace all of the opportunities that are available, appreciate the positive moments, and please reward yourself for a job well done. Working in education means working towards goals such as statutory examinations and end of unit assessments. But sometimes we get so focused on those end results that we forget to celebrate and enjoy the now. Don't forget to celebrate those little wins that happen every single day and every single moment in our schools. Don't forget to celebrate the first time a student achieved something that they couldn't have done before. It's a cause for celebration when a child who's been struggling to form friendships starts socialising with their peers. And please celebrate your own little wins too. Tweet your success stories. I love to see people doing well. It's really encouraging and uplifting, and I'm always retweeting and praising when I see them on there. There's always a reason to celebrate, so just try and find the positive in every single day. Establishing positive relationships with your students, parents, and colleagues will be central to your success as the teacher. Really get to know each and every child you teach and work closely with parents and carers so that everyone can share in the child's learning journey. By getting to know the needs, the motivations, and the aspirations for the children you teach, you can maximise the learning potential of every single child. Positive relationships allow us to collaborate and work together more positively and effectively. Schools thrive because there's a whole team of staff that all work together, with our caretakers and our admin staff, our teaching assistants and our cooks, our lunchtime supervisors, cleaners, finance team, librarians. It's always nice to show appreciation for everyone that you work with because we couldn't do our jobs without their support. No 2 days in the world of education are ever the same. It's so important to be flexible and adaptable, as Professor Rachel Lofthouse just said earlier. You might have planned the most brilliant lesson and have a carefully crafted to-do list for the day ahead. But then a child might come into school and be really upset because they've got a relative who's not well, or maybe there's a child who's forgotten their PE kit and you're going to help them search for it. And suddenly it's the end of the day and you haven't got any of those things done that were on your to-do list. It happens to us all. Things really do get easier, I promise. As a teacher, you'll become a master at prioritising and multitasking. You'll have mentors and colleagues who will lift you up when times are tough. Just don't forget to stop and breathe. Although we're always striving for excellence, just remember that sometimes good has to be good enough. If you've had a challenging lesson, and we've all been there, please try and stay positive. It's when you're feeling disappointed or maybe a little bit deflated that you realise you really are in the right job because you truly care. Reflect on those experiences. Consider strategies that you've used that you'll try again, and think about alternative approaches that you might wish to adopt moving forward. Take advantage of the brilliant support systems and resources that are available, such as the Early Career Hub. BA MEed and Women Ed have lots of things that you can access as well. Read lots, listen to podcasts and the new YouTube channel as well. And if you can, try to attend some conferences and educational events where you can engage with other teaching professionals. The best teachers are always growing, always developing, and always learning. And as Professor Lofthouse said earlier, always becoming. One of my favourite quotes on the slide there, and I use it all the time, is "You can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first." Now, it is the best advice I can give to you, but I can promise you firsthand it's probably the hardest thing that we can do as teachers. We just never stop caring and wanting to help. But it's really important to take the time to look after ourselves so that we're best placed to support our students who need us. Never underestimate the power of a good night's sleep. So when it's late at night and you've got all your marking to do and loads of emails you need to reply to, just think about what your learners really need from you. A teacher who's had a good sleep and is well rested and full of enthusiasm, or the alternative. Your well-being really does matter because you matter. Take the time to invest in yourself and your health. If you've ever seen me at a Women Ed or a Chartered College of Teaching conference before, or if you follow me on social media, you'll hear me say a lot, collaboration, not competition. We are all in this one teaching profession together. When teachers unite, amazing things happen. There are so many teachers sharing their brilliant resources online for free. Adapt them so they're suitable for your learners in your setting. Take a look at the wealth of resources that are available, such as the Chartered College Early Career Hub, BA MEed website, the Women Ed resources as well. Read the stories of women who've been enriched through the Women Ed networks. There's no better resource in education than the skills and experiences of each other, as we've seen here today from the fabulous presenters. Share good practice, observe one another, build your professional networks both online and in real life. Surround yourself with people who bring out the best in you. Find the positive, uplifting people who believe in you, who support you and even challenge you to become the best version of yourself. I find that the Women Ed Network are a constant source of strength, positivity and support. After all, empowered women empower women. I am so proud to be a teacher and a founding fellow of the Chartered College of Teaching and a proud member of the Women Ed Network. I'm delighted to have connected with lots of you here today as well. We are so lucky to have people such as Professor Dame Alison Peacock, who champions our profession every single day. We have Vivian and the amazing Women Ed Network leaders and he for she advocates who are driven to create an equitable society. We can all help to show the world how proud we are to be teachers. And as Alison said earlier, let's encourage others to see that teaching is the best job in the world. Talk up our profession to others in your conversations and on social media as well. Celebrate your achievements. Use the hashtag WomenEd and tweet that you're participating in this event. Tweet what you're taking away from these presentations. Share the positivity. Share the joy of being a teacher. I'd like to wish you the very best of luck in your future careers in education. Enjoy every single moment. Just as Professor Rachel Lofthouse talked about earlier, and the incredible women head teachers that she remembers teaching, your children and young people will remember you for the rest of your lives, of their lives and your lives. Being a teacher comes with a lot of responsibility. It reaps so many rewards. Welcome to our wonderful profession. Thank you.
Super, thank you very much, Sarah. That's been a very helpful and thought-provoking speech, and I cannot agree more with you. Teaching is definitely the best job in the world, and it's important for us to continue to share our views, and it's a positive experience and a positive thing to do. Thank you very much. If you don't mind, I'm going to take the reins back, and I am very delighted. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Deborah Outwhite, and I also want to say to those of you who are still here, we've almost got 200 people still remaining, so that's fantastic. Like everyone else, I always recognise I need a mentor, and I'm very fortunate that I have Deb in my life, and a great privilege to work with her on my studies as well. So without further ado, Deb, over to you.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I am just waiting for this share screen to come up, so that's great. Thanks, Lizana, that's brilliant. So, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to zoom through this because I want to get on to Sam Twisleton and the ending keynote for today's session. It's brilliant that so many of you training to teach and in your first couple of years of teaching have joined us today. We're really proud that you're coming into teaching, and all of us, all the women who've spoken to you today, are all just as passionate as I am about these bullet points here. What we want is for you to have long and fabulous careers in teaching, to support those in your care, to motivate and to inspire others, and go on to become the mentors and the coaches. And I thought Karen Giles' comment just now about friend-tor, a friend and a mentor, kind of sums it up for me. I'm still in touch with people on my PGCE course from 27 years ago. I'm still in touch with people who I trained to teach in my first couple of years of teaching myself. I'm still in touch with the first mentor I had when I became a head of department. And it's really important that those friendships, as well as those mentoring and coaching journeys, kind of carry through with your teaching career with you. So I'm just going to show a couple of different things. So I got a degree, got my PGCE, did a master's, became head of department. And then while I was a head of department, I did lots of writing. I wrote for, Lizana mentioned subject associations earlier on. I wrote for subject journals. I became an examiner. I got my head around the specifications that my students needed, as well as running a team of people. And I think through all of that, you can have very different experiences. In my first year of teaching, one of the women I worked with there is still in that school. She's still doing a role in that school 26 years, 27 years later. And yet I've worked in Hampshire, I've worked in Bedfordshire, I've worked in Derbyshire where I work now, and I've worked in schools, in sixth form colleges, and in a Russell Group university, as well as a Million Plus university. So it's really important, as Jackie Hill said earlier on this morning, to take those opportunities when you get offered them. So I've just written a list up here of opportunities that I've had and been fortunate enough to have and that I've managed to take. And you only do those by being part of the team. As Sarah said, we are a team of leaders in education, female leaders. We work together. We all know each other. We're all happy to support those of you who are just coming in. And we really want you to work with us in any support that you need. So I've been following the people back who followed me on Twitter this morning. I'm not going to spend as long as I was talking to you about applications this morning, but if you're just doing an application, then shout me and I'm happy to direct message you about that. So I'm just going to tell you very quickly about an example of what Rachel was talking about this morning, of the fact that you're always becoming. Okay, so in the first 2 days of lockdown, if people can remember that far ahead, far behind, far ago, I was given a headship interview entirely online. Now, I didn't get that. That was my second headship interview. And a chap was appointed who was on his third headship. And that was absolutely fine. But I just wanted to share that with you because a lot of the interviews you are doing now will of course be online interviews, and just picking up on some of the things Karen said about making sure that we have our own oxygen masks on before we can support other people. So making sure, as Sarah was just saying, we've drunk our own cups of tea in order to do that. And what Bucky was saying about imposter syndrome. So we have had 8 weeks of lockdown now. We're much more familiar with Microsoft Teams than we were a few months ago. But I really wasn't in the first bit. I've done lots on Zoom, and I've done things like EdD examinations on Zoom, but I haven't done much on Microsoft Teams. And if you're being interviewed in the next couple of weeks for your first teaching post, there are a couple of things I think it's tricky to try and get your head round. So ensure that you're in a quiet space, you think about your background, so think about what you're wearing, you're going to an interview, it's an interview like this, the other side of a screen. It's really difficult actually to be in the zone when you're not in the building and you're not getting that adrenaline rush from being in the building. So you expect the same format as I did with my interview schedule, but the process is different. Okay, and I think you need to think about how you come across on screen as part of these interviews that you're having. I was completely floored as an educator for the last 27 years. I was completely floored by them saying, we're going to record these answers because we're recording the answers of all the candidates, and then we'll take that back to the panel so they can watch you afterwards, because they put a time limit on those comments. So we were being filmed for 60-second answers. So you have to think about the content of what you're saying and the fact that you're being filmed and the fact that you've only got 60 seconds to give an answer that you know is going to be replicated out there later on. And for me, that gave me a total sense of incongruence. I wasn't in the school building, I wasn't with the staff I wanted to lead, and I really felt like I'd fallen apart. Now, you can say, that's great, that means it's not the right job for me, and that's absolutely fine. But really, it's about preparation and making sure that you've got somebody to take you through those first questions. Really important as well when it's your first post, the sort of questions you're going to have in your first teaching post, or your first, if you're an early career teacher and you've done a couple of years now, your first head of department post. Okay, so I'd got people to take me through my paces, but they were female colleagues from my MPQEL course, and we'd done it face to face because we'd done it the week before lockdown, and I felt like I was prepared, and actually I wasn't, because I wasn't prepared for the format. And I think it's really important that people have a think about that. So I want to wish you huge amounts of luck with your future careers, the fact that you've joined a fabulous profession and that we're all here to support you in that. So please come along to Women Ed East Midlands events if you're in the East Midlands like me, attend those events in other parts of the country, find people who can be your friend-tours, as Karen was saying earlier on, but work out in advance what your areas of lack of congruence may be. Really think about what you've written in your application. What do you bring to that school? What do you bring to that role? And think about that in this medium by film, and that's really important. Okay, so practice, practice, practice. And as Rachel was saying earlier on, we're always in a state of becoming. So your tips for getting there, wherever that there is for you at the moment, is to understand those landscape challenges, utilise the teamwork, and remember the environment and the ethos. You don't get anywhere by not having a try, and we are here to support you in having that try and supporting those values. Really good luck, everybody. I'm going to zoom off so that Sam can come in and do her part, but do follow me on Twitter if you want, and I'll follow you back if you've got any specific questions. There's my Twitter handle. Thanks very much, Lizana.
Fantastic, thanks Deb. Over to you, Bev.
Thank you very much, Deb. Wonderful to see you. Thank you for all the great comments, and thank you for joining in. It's really fantastic. And we are so delighted to finish with Professor Sam Twistleton, OBE, who is a huge friend to Women Ed, and is my fellow Vice President on the Chartered College of Teaching. Sam, you are very, very welcome. and we can't think of a better person to finish today for us.
Realise I'd muted myself. Sorry about that.
And
Well,
just need to go into presentation mode.
Oh yeah, sorry. I've learned that by now. Great, that works.
Thank you, Sam. Over to you.
Well, first of all, thank you to everybody for hanging on this long. Really grateful, and I hope I don't disappoint you too much. Been a lot of comments about the early
No,
career.
I'm going to interrupt you there, aren't I, Sam?
Yeah.
Why am I interrupting you?
I'm apologising.
No apologising.
I should know better. It's
When
going
I'm
to be
here,
brilliant.
yes, absolutely.
Excellent. I do want to just thank Deborah for that fantastic presentation, though, because she tweeted earlier on about offering to drop her slot so that I could start sooner. And I'm so glad she didn't. That was so useful for everybody, including me. So thanks, Deborah. Anyway, I'm here to talk actually about the ITT core content framework, but in doing that, I will try and say quite a lot about the early career framework as well, because I recognise lots of people are really interested in that. But actually, I'm going to start by going back before either of those things were even thought of, and I'm going back to 2014 actually, when the Carter Review of Initial Teacher Training was announced by Michael Gove, who was then Secretary of State for Education. He didn't last long, actually. It was a few weeks later than that he came out of that job, but he announced it. And a few weeks later, I was asked to be on the advisory panel. Then I'm going to say how all of that links up with where we are now, which I think, as a few people have said today, is quite an exciting time if you're an early career teacher. So back to the Carter Review. Just to give you a very, very brief overview of what it was. It was a review of how initial teacher training was working across the system in England. And those are the people who were involved. My university released me more or less full time for 6 months to do this actually life-changing, brilliant thing of talking to lots and lots of people, including early career teachers, including trainees, including lots of experts, including mentors, employing head teachers, and so on. You can see on the slide there. It was a pretty intense experience, life-changing for me, just because of the brilliant people I got to meet. However, the point I want to make is this. So we had, as I said, lots of meetings with lots of people, including groups of experts. This was a group of experts on SEND. This was a 2-hour meeting where they told us everything that they thought a newly qualified teacher needs to know and understand and be able to apply to their practice in SEND. And you can see it's 15 pages long, and you can sort of see, I know you can't read it, but you can sort of see from the kind of text that it is, it's mainly a list of content. If you could read it, you probably would look at it and think, yeah, actually, I might need to know quite a lot of that stuff. It's 15 pages long. And we had loads of these meetings. And how can you possibly know all that in the amount of time that is available? For most people, it's actually about 9 months. Obviously longer if you do an undergraduate or teach first, but even then, not that long. But 9 months for most people, 2/3 of which is in school, absolutely rightly so, but it really limits the amount of time that you have to meaningfully cover this stuff. And that was one of the things that we said in our report when it was published. We also said some other things, which I'll just briefly talk about, because I think it might help you understand how you might be feeling if you're about to become an NQT. We actually found, despite what I think Michael Gove might have set out to hope we would find, lots of really good practice, lots of really good ITT provision out there. But inevitably, it was inconsistent, because if you're trying to squeeze so much stuff into so short a time, people have to make choices. Everybody can't cover everything really thoroughly. And so that creates inconsistencies, both in terms of what was included and how it's delivered. For me, actually, it was the how it was delivered that was the most interesting bit, because some providers had thought so carefully about how you develop knowledge alongside practice. Who is the best person to develop to help you understand a particular thing? How often, at what level, how often do you need to return to it? Does it need to happen in school? Does it need to happen away from school? And for me, those are the most important things. The other thing that really struck me at the time, and at this time, school-led initial teacher training had become a really big thing, and it was a big thing whether you were in a university provider or a SCIT. Having schools really involved was a really important thing and continues to be. And where you got schools involved in a way that they then intended to hopefully employ a lot of the people they got involved in trainings, that obviously a SCIT is a good example of that, but it's not the only one, where you've got MATs and Teaching School Alliances and so on. What they'd often done is address that problem of how short the time is and how unrealistic it is to try and cover everything in a meaningful way by continuing to develop their teachers in the NQT, RQT and often well beyond, so that actually that training period was significantly extended. And that was a brilliant thing, and those people, particularly the NQTs and the RQTs that we talked to, where that was what had happened, were in such a more confident place. The fact that that happened in some places, though, for me at that time, really shone a light on the fact it wasn't there for everybody. And we talked to plenty of NQTs and RQTs who thought it was really disjointed, or maybe weren't even getting that much in their early career NQT, RQT development. And that was a real problem. So the biggest finding for me, and I'd be interested to know how many people agree, that for the vast majority of people, IT is simply not long enough and not sufficiently guaranteed to join up to early career support. And that, I think, is a real problem. No NQT can possibly be the fully formed product. And I look back to my NQT, I did a PGC many years ago, actually just before Ofsted had even come in. And my school, particularly my head teacher, knew I wasn't the fully formed project, and expectations were adjusted. And that can be the case. We saw plenty of examples where that was what NQTs were telling us, but we saw lots of examples where it wasn't, because the accountability system is such that you can feel the pressure and you can feel like you're meant to be perfect and you simply can't be. Really important that you understand you cannot be. You never will feel perfect. You're always learning. So fast forward, so that was back in 2014-15. Fast forward several years later, and a teacher recruitment and retention problem, which was already emerging when we did the review, had become so big a problem that the government published this teacher recruitment and retention strategy. I was lucky enough to be on the advisory group for this. And actually, again, a really good experience, because at last the government was taking really, really seriously the fact that we have a problem with teacher recruitment, mainly because we've got a problem with teacher retention. More and more teachers were dropping out of the profession, and every year it was getting worse, and every year it was getting earlier. And the latest statistics confirm that is still what's happening. And for me, obviously, there's a whole range of reasons as to why that's happened. But this shortness of ITE and the lack of guaranteed continuation of development in your early career is a huge part of that. So in this recruitment and retention strategy, one of the biggest things that they published was this thing about transforming the support for early career teachers, which has become this early career framework. And then just shortly after that, they decided that they would also create an initial teacher training framework. And that's the thing that I have been spending a lot of my time recently on, because I chaired the group for that. So I'm going to say a bit about the ITT core content framework, which comes in for people starting their teacher training this September, which you might think for many of you feels a bit too late for you to be hearing about. But I think it's important, because actually a lot of what I'm going to say will help you understand the early career framework too. So the two together join up to create, from September, a minimum entitlement for everybody from that point of at least 3 years evidence-based support and development. 3 years because you've got the first year in the PGCE year or longer if it's undergraduate, and then you've got 2 years beyond that of support and development. It's not about making it harder to be a teacher, it's about making it easier, because it's there to support you and hopefully also to help those around you to realise that you are still learning and to adjust their expectations. So it's a really good thing. There's a picture of Velcro there to show that what the ITT bit tries to do is Velcro into the early career framework so that the two are as seamless as possible, because that's what we saw in the Carter Review, where you had that, we had the same people involved in the initial bit continuing with the next bit, and they could create that continuity. It made it so much more effective. So that's what we're trying to do with the early career framework. So this slide here is actually a page from the ITT core content framework, but I can explain it in a way that helps you to understand the early career framework as well. In that you've got these two columns, the learn that column and the learn how to column. The learn that column in both documents is absolutely identical. Not a single word has changed there. And that's really important. That's part of that Velcroing. The learn how is where you see really quite a lot of difference. And even though you might be an NQT or about to become an NQT, it's probably worth looking at both, because I think it will give you some insights as to how the kind of the curriculum spirals up for you as an NQT. So as a ITT trainee, what we've done is we've put a lot of emphasis on this right hand column on the kinds of experiences that you should be having when you're doing your ITT course, with a lot of emphasis on what happens in school, because as I said, 2/3 of the time is spent there, but it's also a lot of research, including my own, shows it's probably the most powerful place for your learning. It's where the real connections get made. And some of this advice I think will continue to be useful as an NQT as well. The kinds of conversations that you should have, the kinds of people you should talk to, the kinds of things that you should practice, the kinds of things that you should make sure that you observe. And you know, as I say, I think a lot of that will continue to be helpful. Also, for those of you who are obviously not in school on placement now, and have possibly some time on your hands, some of this stuff you can do by looking at videos, by looking at the tasks that you've been set by your ITT provider and so on. So it's a useful document to look at, and it's freely available. Just do a quick Google and you'll find it. Both documents are organised into these different sections. I think that these were mentioned by Jackie earlier on. I'm not going to explain them any before, other than to say, as Jackie kind of hinted at, the early career framework itself is being piloted from September in Bradford, Doncaster, Greater Manchester and the North East. But because the government are so concerned that NQTs will be understandably feeling a bit less confident this coming autumn, because they've had this disruption, particularly to their placement experience, they are looking at ways of expanding the areas. They still haven't been published as to where they're going to be, but they're prioritising the most disadvantaged areas, but also making it available in some form for everybody. That's still been worked on the detail, but watch this space. All of you, if you're about to be an NQT, should be able to benefit from this framework in some form next year, which I hope will really help you feel reassured that already the government is kind of making a big statement about the importance of supporting you. This is one of the slides I just quickly added an extra word to, the Frenta word. In the ITT core content framework, we talk a lot about the importance of getting help from expert colleagues. And again, I think all of this, or nearly all of it, also applies to NQTs and RQTs. Who you get your help for depends on what the help is that you need. The importance of having a network around you, which has been emphasised by so many people today, I can't emphasise enough. So you will have a formal mentor, and if you're lucky enough to be part of the Early Career Framework pilot in some form, that mentor will be having additional training. But even if they haven't, they're usually a really wise, experienced, expert person who should be your go-to for quite a lot of things. But they won't be the only source of support. And one of my pieces of advice to you is to really put quite a lot of effort in finding out when you, in the school that you're in next year, you know, what the different strengths and areas of interest all the people in the school, including non-teaching, because some of my best support in NQT year actually came from teaching assistants. The pastoral support often much better comes from somebody like that who is spending a lot of time individually with particular children. Also, though, all the sorts of forms of support that have been mentioned today, I can't emphasise enough. Your peer networks, I'm still in touch with people I trained with all those years ago, subject associations, Chartered College, obviously, as the vice president, you know, I'm a massive fan because it's just so brilliant. It's brilliant in its entirety, as well as in the early career hub bit. Please do have a look, join up if you haven't already, and have a really good look there. Jackie mentioned that Teach First was one of the pilot providers. I've put this slide up not because I'm trying to push one of the others. As Jackie said, they're all actually quite similar. They all have these things in common with each other. I just thought it's one of an additional slide I just stuck in because I thought you might be interested to see what's actually involved. So it's a 2-year package, very structured training and support for early career teachers, has a lot of emphasis on the importance of mentoring and coaching, has a lot of emphasis on practitioners supporting you. So as well as your formal in-school mentor, a lot of the additional input will be from school-based experts, as well as involvement, in the case of this one, from Education Development Trust and Sheffield Hallam, but similarly with the others, which are Teach First, Ambition, and the IOE UCL. I'm getting towards the end of mine. I just wanted to kind of come away a little bit from the sort of mechanics of the early career framework, just to finish by talking about the importance of role models. And actually a lot of this has been said already, but here are my examples. So the role models that you surround yourself with, both in school and in life, really do matter. I'm at a point in my life now where I can really look back and realise, now this is me and my mum. She died just a couple of years ago, and I miss her every day. I'm partly pleased that she's not around for me to worry about during this pandemic, because she would have been a nightmare following instructions. But she was a primary school teacher, and like many people whose parents are teachers, I spent most of my adolescence sort of denying that I would ever be a teacher because it was so uncool to do what your parent does. But actually it's because she was such a good teacher, really. In the end, I got sucked in, and I've never regretted it, and she's been a massive role model and continues to be. This is my PhD supervisor, who was also my boss for a while, Anne Edwards, Professor Anne Edwards from Oxford University. Amazing. I started my PhD when I had a baby and a toddler. I was working part-time, and she just wrapped everything around me to make it possible for me to do my job and to do my PhD. Absolutely amazing, inspirational woman. This is my sister. She had a stroke when she was 35. She had to relearn how to talk, how to read and write. She now is an amazing champion for the Dysphasia Society, and a fantastic, brilliant role model for me. But actually, you know, it'll tell me off if I say anything too apologetic about this, so I won't, although I feel it. I am a role model for others, and this is my daughter. This is me outside Buckingham Palace a couple of years ago getting my OBE, and this is what my daughter tweeted, and it was lovely, because normally she's just sarcastic or embarrassed. She actually did mean this. And then that night we went to the Shard, and she was taking a picture, and she'd got it the wrong way around. She's trying to take a picture out of the window, and so she tweeted this thing: lessons learned from this weekend, taking a selfie at the top of Shard, make sure the view behind you is not in front. I just responded saying, who cares, the best view is my daughter. And then I got this lovely response from Vijay Patel, where she's sharing that with her daughter. So it does matter, you know, the role models that you take your inspiration from matter, but you are a role model for others. And, you know, you're doing such an important job, and you are actually going to be rippling out to a lot of people over the time in your career. So this is my final set of advice. You've all come into this profession presumably because you're really kind of fascinated by education, and you know how life-changing it can be for individuals, for communities, and for societies. And, you know, goodness, we need that right now, don't we? So focus on that. That's probably what gets you out of bed in the morning in terms of going to work. Make sure that that's your guiding principle in terms of how you prioritize your time. But having said that, that doesn't mean that you can't sometimes make practical choices and put family first, as my PhD supervisor really showed me. A lot of people have said about seizing opportunities. I do say yes more than no. I'm always getting advice about being better at saying no, but I don't actually regret saying yes to most things. Sometimes I don't succeed, but actually failure is learning. We all know that. We need to remind ourselves. But just saying yes has opened up so many interesting things for me. Kind of linked to that, in my first school as an NQT, I think the school sort of roughly divided itself into two halves, really, the positive and the negative. And some positive, fantastic role models that I surrounded myself with. But also in the staff room, every lunchtime, there was a group of teachers who were like dementors. And it's really easy, I found myself in that autumn term, to get sucked into their way of thinking and thinking everything was awful. And it really wasn't, but it felt awful because I was seeing it through their lens. And I think it's probably my mum told me to get a grip, take control, and actually made a conscious decision to focus my time and energy on the positive people. Just taking control itself made me feel a lot better, but then actually surrounding myself with positivity, people like Sarah Mullen, isn't she brilliant, makes all the difference. And I think linked to that, looking outwards, schools can become quite insular places. And that's great because you have a real sense of family and community. But it's important to look outwards as well, spend time in other schools if you can, spend time outside of education as well. The importance of keeping up with friends who can't talk to you about teaching is a piece of advice I would give. Many of you I know are worrying about September. I would be if I was you. You feel like you've missed a huge chunk of your course. We know that final placement time is a real growth point. I put a link earlier on to a blog I've written about this. And inevitably you will start in September feeling a bit shakier than you would have done. But actually what I'm witnessing, because lots of NQTs are about to be NQTs, they're getting in touch with me, is one of the reasons why it's such a growth point isn't just about being in school. You're at a point now where you know what you do know, you know what you don't know, you're able to think a bit bigger picture about the kind of teacher you want to be. And you're making great use of things like this to actually really form your identity as a teacher. And that will really, really will put you in good stead in September. I'm also talking to lots of head teachers who are thinking that September is going to be all about teamwork, and nobody's going to be an expert in anything in September because the world is going to feel so different. We're going to be in bubbles, we're going to be social distancing, it's going to be a mix of face-to-face and remote. It'll be new for everybody, and that's a great time to be joining a team because you don't have to feel like the novice surrounded by experts in all aspects. Relationships both with your fellow teachers and establishing the relationships with your pupils, which is always important, but it's going to be even more important after this gap that they've had, is going to be the thing that's most important. And you're brilliant at that. The fact that you're here today on a Saturday shows that you're brilliant at that. So, take some confidence. I think it will be all right. I'm not blaming you for feeling nervous at all, but I think it will be all right. I think actually in some ways it'll be a great time to be joining the profession. Everybody knows how important teachers are. You are the future, and you're joining at a time when society needs you more than ever. So be proud. You're doing the most important job that exists. None of the others could exist without it. You couldn't have brain surgeons or any of the others without good teachers. So just sort of feel energized and enthusiastic about what lies ahead, because it's going to be great. And that's me finished.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sam, for that really insightful talk. And again, I can't stress enough the importance of having good role models, good mentors. And again, of course, you're right, we're feeling it's the best profession in the world. And of course, we lead others to also become the best they can be. I'm going to claim the host bit back, and then I'm going to hand back to Vivian, who's going to wrap up the day for us in regards to the final plenary.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much, Sam, for that. You are the future and the society needs you. How wonderful. What a wonderful way to finish. Thank you so much. Can I share my screen?
Mm-hmm. You should be able to vote if you've got hosting powers.
There we go. So, it's been wonderful seeing the comments on the chat.
Because it didn't get going on time. That's the impact.
Can people mute their mics and turn their cameras off, that would be great. Thank you. It's been wonderful listening to the chat and seeing the chat and so many comments about how you're going to be 10% braver. Thank you to the person who put their first tweet out. Wonderful, really appreciated. And I just want to finish off with a couple of minutes asking now what that key question is for us. As a result of this morning, what have you taken from it? And in what way is that going to let you be 10% braver? I loved it at the end of Sam's presentation when she said she was going to be more brave and she was going to be more proud and she was going to say it loudly. That's what we want you to do. Take confidence from today. Know what your strengths are. Know that you can tackle challenges, that you can kick imposter syndrome into touch. Know that you can be 10% braver. And we want you to share with the people you've connected with today and with us how you are being 10% braver. If you could add that in on the chat, we can save the chat and send it out to everybody. Or if you do it on Twitter, then say, you know, I'm being 10% braver by. We want you to be braver, prouder of what you're doing, and say that very loudly. We want women to have a voice on Twitter. We want women to lead education. We want our he for she colleagues to support them, to mentor them, to celebrate them, to shout about women's achievements in education. And together, we're going to take hold of education and turn it into the education system that is right for us and is right for our students. Thank you very much to all of our fellow contributors today. Thank you so much for the wonderful comments and for the great feedback this morning. Lots of questions and answers. We'll put it on Twitter, but I know Lizana wants to write a blog about some of the needs coming out of today so that we can collate and collect the information. You're part of the Women Ed community. Please continue to stay connected and stay championing women to lead education. Thank you very much, Lizana, for all of the technical support and your presentation and all of the work you've done today. And thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at another Women Ed event. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you.